Chapter 1133. Was the ice cream delicious? From the way the three generals ate a mouthful of ice cream, it could be seen. It was as if they were drunk, which made the people around them feel very magical. It was beautiful and delicious. Was it ice cream? Chi narrowed her eyes, and a misty expression appeared on her white face. She was feeling the taste of the ice cream melting in her mouth. The moment the mouthful of ice cream entered her mouth, it was as cold as a silver spoon. That cold sensation seemed to have instantly absorbed all of the turbid air and hot air in her mouth, and a refreshing feeling instantly spread throughout her entire body. That feeling could only be described with one word: awesome. The ice cream wrapped around the silver spoon had also become ice cold, and when it came into contact with her supple red lips, the sensitivity of her lips and skin was unleashed to the extreme, as if a bolt of electricity had instantly spread throughout her entire body. Of course, the most important thing was the taste. If you wanted to eat something cold, eating ice cubes was the same. However, this ice cream was not ice cubes, or it could be said that it was different from ice cubes. The milky taste filled her mouth, so mellow that it made people drunk. Inadvertently, a blush appeared on her cheeks, as if she was shy when she tasted something good for the first time. That delicious taste instantly spread, making people tremble. With the smooth, milky taste, it had the refreshing feeling of ice crystals. Chi narrowed her eyes, and her long eyelashes trembled. At that moment, the fire that the general of the Red Dragon Army had been controlling seemed to have been extinguished without him noticing. She exhaled softly. The corners of her mouth curled up, revealing a charming smile. She opened her eyes, and there was an indescribable emotion in them. That emotion had not appeared on Chi-Si's face for a long time. Since she grew up, the smile on her face had been constantly disappearing. Now, all that was left of her was an indescribable majesty and killing intent. After eating a mouthful of ice cream, Chi-Si's heart instantly softened. The ice crystals that encased his heart seemed to melt along with the ice cream in his mouth, melting away like snow. Using the silver spoon, she once again carefully scooped a spoonful of ice cream into her mouth. The milky fragrance was mellow, and it was so delicious that her body and mind relaxed. Just like what Dami Hayashi had just shouted. It was as if there was an electric current that stimulated the girl's heart that had been silent for a long time. Chi-Si smiled. The corners of her mouth rose, her eyes narrowed, revealing a happy smile. This kind of food that could make people laugh heartily was really inconceivable. After eating this delicacy, it was as if his emotions were no longer under his control. As she continued to eat, she scooped up the rose petals and stuffed them into her mouth. The cool texture, the sweet taste, and the rich milky fragrance, the three instantly mixed together. Delicious, Chi murmured. On the other side, Dami Hayashi had already gone crazy. This kind of delicacy, this kind of taste, this kind of food that could stimulate her girlish heart was hard to come by. It was driving her crazy. She did not want to eat as elegantly as Chi. She was, in fact, a commoner. Therefore, she didn't even need a silver spoon. She grabbed the blue and white porcelain bowl and started to eat heartily. His mouth was filled with the juice of the melted ice cream. She stuck out her tongue and licked it without any care for her image. Her eyes immediately burst forth with resplendent brilliance. Wahaha! It's so delicious! Dami Hayashi was so excited that she couldn't help but laugh. This was very in line with her character. She would go crazy if she didn't like it. On the other side, a general who did not have the stunning beauty of Chi and Dami Hayashi was silently eating ice cream. Her movements were not very big, and it could even be said that she was not conspicuous at all, although she had a tall and sturdy figure. But when she ate the ice cream, she was very careful. It could be seen that her character should also be very careful. Eating and eating, that Heimu's eyes suddenly became red. The more she ate, the more her eyes seemed to have a flood that was about to burst out. Finally, she couldn't help it anymore. Tears flowing down her cheeks. With a plop, like a broken string of pearls, they fell to the ground. This bowl of ice cream touched her soft and tender heart, and a myriad of emotions welled up in her heart. She felt as if she were reminiscing about her teenage years. That was her innocent and beautiful time. The crowd below was already stunned by what they saw. Eating a bowl of ice cream, the three generals actually showed such exaggerated expressions. Could it be that this ice cream was really so magical? Everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. In the next moment, everyone's heart burned with passion. Their eyes stared at the three generals, and their hearts couldn't help but tremble. Looking at them constantly scooping ice cream into their mouths, it was as if there was some kind of magic that made their hearts become incomparably eager. This was a desire that was difficult to suppress. Even Chef Jing Yuan felt a little itchy in her heart. Slurp, slurp, a shameless licking sound rang out. Everyone's eyes focused on it. They saw General Dami Hayashi holding that blue and white porcelain bowl, sticking out her tongue and licking the bowl nonstop. F***CK. Dami Hayashi's eyes suddenly lit up. The feeling of licking is even better, Dami Hayashi exclaimed. Chi-Si and Hei Mu were stunned. Almost subconsciously, they held the blue and white porcelain bowl and licked it. Their tongues rubbed against the ice cream, and the cold feeling instantly burst forth. The tip of their tongues touched the ice cream, and the sweet taste and milky fragrance suddenly burst forth. Chi-Si and Hei Mu's eyes also shrank. It's true. So magical. The two of them smiled in surprise. Then, they abandoned the silver spoon and began to seriously lick the blue and white porcelain bowl. The taste seeped into their hearts, making them extremely happy. The memories of their youth constantly surged out from the depths of their memories. Bu Fong clasped his hands behind his back, looking at the three of them eating. He wasn't surprised. Of course, his original intention was not to let the three of them lick the ice cream, but they actually learned it without a teacher. It seemed that in the face of ice cream, women's subconscious reaction was to lick it. Bu Fong originally wanted to develop some other types of ice cream in the future. Today's ice cream could only be said to be the original flavor. If he could add the taste of other immortal fruits, it would definitely be more delicious. Of course, this required Bu Fong's subsequent efforts to research. Bu Fong thought about it. In a place like Goddess City, if he could open an ice cream shop, business would definitely be booming. Compared to Spring Breeze Pavilion, the ability to make money would definitely not be inferior. Bu Fong rubbed his chin. Suddenly, just as this thought flashed past his mind, in his mind, the system's serious voice rang out. Temporary mission triggered. Before the host enters God Vanishing Mountain, please open an ice cream shop in Goddess City and teach the chef apprentices to learn at least 3 ways to make ice cream. Temporary mission reward, gourmet array, imprisonment. Bu Fong was stunned. He didn't think that the system would actually speak at this time and even issue a temporary mission. Open a shop in Goddess City? And it was an ice cream shop at that? Ice cream shops did not only have ice cream, but also many other ice-type delicacies, such as ice cream cones, popsicles, iced milk tea, and so on. How could Bu Fong have so much time to do these things? He furrowed his brows and suddenly felt a headache coming on. And this time, the temporary mission reward was actually a gourmet array. He had already awakened 3 gourmet arrays, and this would be the 4th. The first 3 gourmet arrays, according to their functions, were enhancement, explosion, and defense. Now, with the addition of this array, imprisonment. Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. This effect should be very good. With the enhancement of the gourmet array, Bu Fong made a rampage ramen. As for the explosion array, Bu Fong made a perishing pot and an explosive meatball. As for the defense, Bu Fong had not yet added it to the gourmet array. However, for the invincible Bu Fong with the vermilion robe, the defense of this gourmet array was basically useless, so Bu Fong did not use it much. Forget it. Let's not think about this for now. Bu Fong's main goal now was to win this cooking competition. Of course, judging from the current situation, Bu Fong had basically stabilized. Chef Jing Yuan herself was attracted by Bu Fong's ice cream. There was no doubt about the outcome of the competition. Whoosh, Chi-Si, Dami Hayashi, and the other 2 generals finally finished eating their ice cream. They even licked the blue and white porcelain bowl clean. After eating, They put down their bowls and let out a long breath. That kind of comfortable feeling, that kind of joy, was simply indescribable. The surrounding crowd had long been salivating. They also wanted to taste the delicious taste of the ice cream. It wasn't just them. Even the female King Biluo, who was sitting on the spirit gold throne and watching the three generals eat their ice cream, couldn't help but feel a little impatient. Her flaming red lips parted, a little impatient. Fortunately, she still cared about her face and didn't go out. Moreover, the female King Biluo also thought that since Bufang had made this dish, he would naturally take it out during the imperial feast. At that time, she could have a good taste. But soon, a bitter expression appeared on her face again. She really wanted to eat it now. Whether it was the female King Biluo or they both pursed their lips. After eating their ice cream, the three generals rested for a while. Then, Chef Jing Yuan's dish was served. That brilliant dish, which was steaming hot, was reflected in the eyes of the three generals. The color and aroma were not bad, and the three of them also had a little appetite. However, after tasting it, the three of them, who usually thought that Chef Jing Yuan's dishes were very delicious, didn't show any enthusiasm. Their emotions didn't fluctuate much. Chef Jing Yuan saw the three of them after eating the dish, and she understood that she had already lost. Completely lost. Moreover, it was a kind of crushing defeat. This kind of defeat was really difficult for her to accept. Her mood was a little depressed. This was the first time she tasted defeat, and it made Chef Jing Yuan want to cry. Chef Jing Yuan's dishes are also very delicious. However, they don't give me the feeling of being moved. They just become a little ordinary, Qi Si thought for a moment and said. She wanted to comfort Jing Yuan. However, after thinking about it, she could only say such a sentence. Indeed, compared with ice cream, this dish was really ordinary. Chef Jing Yuan pursed her lips, and her eyes quickly turned red. She lost. The onlookers below also couldn't help but be silent. They didn't know what to say. Their goddess city's most powerful chef actually lost to a male chef. Silence was the best way now. Isn't it normal for you to lose? You haven't condensed the heart of cooking path, which means that you still have some doubts about your own path. You don't know if you can really walk this path. Suddenly, just as Chef Jing Yuan was about to cry, Bufang opened his mouth. His words were sharp, and there was not a hint of sympathy in them. Jing Yuan was stunned, and she couldn't help but raise her head. Just when everyone thought that Bufang was going to ridicule her, the crowd suddenly saw that Bufang had walked to the remaining ice cream, dug out 2 ice balls, and put them into the blue and white porcelain bowl. With a flick of his finger, that blue and white porcelain bowl flew toward Jing Yuan. Jing Yuan was stunned, and the surrounding people were also stunned. Then, everyone revealed a look of jealousy and madness. Ice cream. They also wanted to eat it. Jing Yuan took the ice cream that Bufang handed over. She raised her head and looked at Bufang, her eyes a little puzzled. Have a bite. Maybe there will be a surprise. Bufang looked at Jing Yuan, the corners of his mouth twitching. Jing Yuan furrowed her brows, as though she understood Bufang's meaning. Bufang said that her heart of cooking path hadn't condensed yet, and she knew it clearly. Because when she was cooking, sometimes she would feel lost. Taking a deep breath, she emptied her mind. Jing Yuan grabbed the silver spoon in the porcelain bowl. She dug a small spoonful of ice cream, then carefully put it into her mouth. As soon as it entered her mouth, Jing Yuan's eyes suddenly changed. Chapter 1134. Jing Yuan had never thought that there would be such a delicious thing. This kind of deliciousness was completely different from the deliciousness of the dishes. The ice-cold feeling that entered her mouth instantly spread throughout her entire body. The smooth texture, the rich milky fragrance, and the unique flavor that permeated the air caused her to be completely stunned. Why is it so delicious? Jing Yuan held the blue and white porcelain bowl, holding the silver spoon in her mouth. Her whole person was stunned on the spot. Her gaze became a little complicated. After taking a bite of Bufang's dish, she understood why Qi Si and the others said that her dishes had become ordinary. In fact, compared to this dish, her dishes were indeed very ordinary. There was no breathtaking taste, nor was there a deep impression. An ordinary dish was the one that caused her to fail. But she had worked very hard. For cooking dishes, she had spent all her effort, and she had done the best she could. But the result was still the same. She lost. With her level, she was indeed not qualified to continue cooking for Her Majesty the Queen. Holding the blue and white porcelain bowl, she used the silver spoon to scoop another spoonful of ice cream ball and put it in her mouth. The smell of the melted ice cream caused tears to fall from Jing Yuan's eyes. Although Bu Fong's ice cream ball was not decorated with any carvings, even if it was just an ice cream ball, Jing Yuan could taste the deliciousness contained in it. It also let her know the gap between her and Bu Fong. When Qi Si saw that Jing Yuan was actually crying, she suddenly panicked. Dami Hayashi and He Mu also couldn't help but stand up. Their faces had a complicated look. On one side was the glory of Goddess City's chef, and on the other side was Bu Fong, who cooked a delicious ice cream dish. Jing Yuan was crying, and they didn't know what to say. Bu Fong looked at Jing Yuan. His eyes were indifferent. "Is it delicious?" Bu Fong asked. Jing Yuan's eyes and nose were red as she ate the ice cream ball. She softly nodded and nodded. He would be lying if he said it wasn't delicious. Jing Yuan didn't know what to say. In reality, this ice cream had truly exceeded her expectations. She felt as if she had just taken a bite of it, and she was reminded of the innocent and beautiful times when she had first begun to learn cooking. Then don't cry. You should be happy eating delicious food. Bu Fong looked at Jing Yuan and said. Jing Yuan took a deep breath, then looked at Bu Fong. "You said that I can't condense my heart of cooking path. Can you tell me how to condense it?" Jing Yuan said. At this moment, she was already asking Bu Fong with the attitude of seeking knowledge. No one said a word. Chef Jing Yuan's failure had left many of them in a daze. The heart of cooking path is your understanding of cooking. There are thousands of cooking paths. If you want to walk on that path, you need to have a firm direction. You have been stagnant because you haven't found your own path. Your goal is to become the head chef of the imperial feast, but once you don't have this goal, you'll be lost. You can only cook dishes aimlessly, and those dishes will lack the essence and obsession. Bu Fong said. Qi Si pursed her red lips, looking at Bu Fong thoughtfully. Dami Hayashi was confused. Many people around also didn't understand. Of course, it didn't matter whether they understood or not. The important thing was that Jing Yuan could understand. Jing Yuan's eyes were confused for a while, then slowly became firm. Looking at her appearance, Bu Fong couldn't help but slightly raise the corner of his mouth. "Tell me, what do you think the direction of your cooking path is?" Bu Fong looked at Jing Yuan, slowly saying. Jing Yuan stared blankly. She glanced at her surroundings before lowering her head to look at the two balls of ice cream in the porcelain bowl. The moment she took a bite of the ice cream, the feeling of happiness that rose from the depths of her heart caused her gaze to gradually become resolute. She held the porcelain bowl tightly with both hands, took a deep breath, and looked at Bu Fong. "I want to learn how to make ice cream." Jing Yuan looked at Bu Fong, sincerely saying. She seemed to be afraid that Bu Fong would be unhappy, so she was a little cautious. The other party's answer didn't seem to be beyond Bu Fong's expectations. Any female chef, after tasting the delicious taste of ice cream, would want to learn how to make it. Jing Yuan should also understand that if Bu Fong left Goddess City, this kind of delicious food would disappear. The disappearance of this kind of delicious food was a disaster for Goddess City. With just a bite of ice cream, Jing Yuan deeply fell in love with this delicious taste. She felt that she must learn how to make ice cream. "If you want to learn, you can be my apprentice chef." Bu Fong raised the corner of his mouth, clasped his hands, and looked at Jing Yuan. Jing Yuan was stunned. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. Bu Fong didn't refuse? Qi Si's brows furrowed tightly. She looked at Bu Fong, seemingly a little dissatisfied. Jing Yuan was the chef of Spring Breeze Pavilion. How could she become a man's apprentice chef? This kind of thing. I agree. Jing Yuan's voice was incomparably firm. This made Qi Si's pupils shrink, and she looked at her in disbelief. How could it be? How could Jing Yuan agree to such a request? "I agree to be your apprentice chef. I want to learn how to make ice cream, Jing Yuan said seriously. After Jing Yuan finished speaking, it was as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. The aura on her body suddenly changed, becoming even more condensed. The sound of a heartbeat rang out. It was as if it had burst forth from ancient times. The heart of cooking path had solidified. At this moment, Jing Yuan's aura seemed to have undergone an earth-shaking change. At this moment, Jing Yuan had become the Heaven Chief. The only thing she lacked was a firm belief. Very well, in that case, you will follow me to learn cooking. However, the main thing now is to complete the imperial feast, Bu Fong said. Without a doubt, in this cooking competition, Bu Fong won and obtained the qualification to cook for the imperial feast. Although Jing Yuan lost, she would still be Bu Fong's assistant and complete the imperial feast cooking together. The surrounding people looked at Bu Fong with a somewhat complicated gaze. Of course, they were curious about the taste of the ice cream. It was a pity that, as the audience, they did not have the chance to taste the delicacy that moved the three generals. Bu Fong put away the white tiger stove and tidied up the kitchen utensils. The vermilion robe on his body fluttered. Then, he looked at Jing Yuan. Now, take me to the kitchen where the imperial feast is cooked, Bu Fong said. Jing Yuan, who was at the side, quickly stuffed the ice cream into her mouth. Her face was red as she ate. Seeing that Bu Fong had asked her, she raised her head and came back to her senses. The crowd dispersed. The three generals were also relatively busy, so they left separately. Chi-Si summoned the red dragon and rode on it. In a short while, they disappeared into the horizon. Dami Hayashi summoned the green dragon, and Hei Mu summoned the black dragon. The departure of the three generals signified the end of the imperial feast competition that was not considered to be very intense. Everyone left. Only Jing Yuan and Bu Fong, who had finished their ice cream, were left. Head Chef Bu, please follow me, Jing Yuan said seriously to Bu Fong. Then, she brought Bu Fong around the dragon lake and walked toward the palace. She lost just like that? Jing Yuan, that lass, admitted defeat so easily? The female King Biluo looked at the end of the cooking competition with a dumbfounded face. The ice cream was not late, and it seemed that she had lost the bet. You crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at her. The female King Biluo smiled awkwardly. Seeing Yu's expression, she suddenly felt playful. She pinched Yu's head and rubbed it against her chest. If I lost, I lost. Isn't it just agreeing to Sister Yu's request? What is Sister afraid of? The female King Biluo said with a smile. Then, she brought Yu and flew toward the palace. This time, she was suddenly looking forward to seeing how the imperial feast cooked by Bu Fong would turn out. To be able to win against Jing Yuan, it meant that Bu Fong's cooking skills were not bad. If it was a delicacy like ice cream, this time's imperial feast would be exciting. Goddess City, Sacrificial Sect Manor, the high priestess sat cross-legged on a praying mat. Not far from her was an incense burner, for which light blue smoke slowly diffused. That smoke had a unique fragrance. Smelling it, one spirit would be slightly relaxed, and their entire body would feel much more comfortable. Wei Jin pushed open the door to the room, slowly walking in from outside. She had already put on the loose robe once again. She no longer had the feeling of being stripped by Nether King Ha, and she had regained her composure. Is the competition over? The high priestess did not wait for Wei Jin to speak. She raised her eyes and said, This high priestess's face was plain, without any makeup. She looked simple and beautiful. At this moment, she was holding a wooden comb, combing her long hair. It's over. That man won, Wei Jin said. She had also watched that cooking competition. The appearance of ice cream made her very curious, and she even wanted to eat it. However, thinking of her mission, she endured it. Oh, it's not out of my expectations. The high priestess nodded, not saying anything. She placed the wooden comb down, placing it into the dressing box at the side. The high priestess's eyes stared at the incense burner. Some time ago, I deduced a prophecy. The high priestess's voice was very gentle. Wei Jin froze, her heart suddenly trembling. The high priestess's prophecy? That prophecy said that Goddess City will appear soon, and a big thing will happen in the God-vanishing mountains, forbidden land. To Goddess City, it's hard to judge whether it's a blessing or a curse. The high priestess said softly. Wei Jin's body trembled even more violently. Goddess City will appear? Goddess City was a forbidden land force in the God-vanishing mountain, and there was an agreement that it could not appear. Why would the high priestess make such a prophecy? Moreover, this prophecy was hard to predict. High priestess, should we report to Her Majesty and tell her about this prophecy? Wei Jin felt her teeth chattering, and her entire body seemed to be shrouded in a wave of coldness. What are you afraid of? No one can destroy Goddess City. As long as the Forbidden Land exists, even if the Nether Prison's army invades, Goddess City will be safe and sound. The high priestess chuckled. That smile was like 100 flowers blooming, extremely brilliant. As for Her Majesty, this high priestess will naturally tell her. However, now is not the time. Wait until the imperial feast is over. Don't disturb Her Majesty's mood. The high priestess said. After saying that, she opened the lid of the incense burner, using a small spoon to scoop up some light blue crystalline powder and poured it into the incense burner. Light blue smoke once again spread out. Goddess City, Imperial Palace Kitchen. The Imperial Palace's kitchen was bustling with activity. Women came and went, unceasingly processing the ingredients. Jing Yuan brought Bu Fong into the kitchen. After walking around the chaotic crowd, they finally came to a quiet place. The imperial feast is different from ordinary banquets. Every year, when the imperial feast is held, it is the happiest day of the year in Goddess City, Jing Yuan said. As for the imperial feast, the dishes and recipes are basically fixed. Other than a few dishes that can be changed according to the chef's wishes, the other dishes must be cooked strictly according to the recipes. This room has the recipes. Head chef Bu needs to master all the dishes and the recipes by tomorrow and tell us the names of the dishes that need to be changed so that we can prepare the ingredients. The imperial feast requires a total of 18 dishes. 3 of them are for the sacrificial ceremony, and the remaining 15 are for eating. The 3 sacrificial dishes are the set dishes of the sacrificial ceremony and cannot be changed. Jing Yuan said in a low voice. Bu Fong listened attentively. Since he had accepted the imperial feast, Bu Fong would naturally do his best. This was the integrity of a chef. A creaking sound rang out. The door was pushed open. Inside the door, the candlelight flickered quietly. As the door was pushed open, the flame flickered unceasingly. Bu Fong stepped inside. This was a small room with a table, a chair, and a pot of tea. On the table, there were 18 warm jade talismans. The jade talismans recorded the recipes. There was nothing else. When Jing Yuan saw Bu Fong enter, she bowed slightly and closed the door. She did not do anything else. She just quietly stood in front of the door as if she was guarding it. In front of her was the busy imperial palace kitchen. The sounds of cooking, fire, and noise were unceasing. On the other side, after saying goodbye to Bu Fong, Hades Era held the spicy strip he had gotten from Bu Fong in his mouth, walking leisurely toward the imperial palace's main hall. As the Lord of Netherworld, it was time for him to meet the Empress of Goddess City. Chapter 1135. Actually, Goddess City was like a small country. The female King Biluo was the monarch of a country. The majestic palace was located in the center of Goddess City. After crossing the Dragon Lake, it was the main road to the palace. The road was paved with green bricks, which were extremely smooth. Walking to the stairs in front of the palace, the stairs were made of white jade. Stepping on it gave one a warm feeling. The handrails on both sides were also made of white jade. The sculptor's craftsmanship was superb, and the statues were vivid as if they were alive, spreading their wings and flying. Hades Era held the spicy strip in his mouth, walking forward. His robe was open, revealing his white chest. A playful smile hung at the corner of his mouth. At Nether King Erha's side, armored guards followed him from both sides, looking a little vigilant. Of course, Hades Era didn't care about that. Following the main road, he stepped on the stairs, heading toward the imperial palace. Shortly after, he entered the main hall of the imperial palace. With a loud bang, the door of the main hall suddenly closed. Hades' era narrowed his eyes, looking into the distance. There was a graceful figure reclining on the high platform. A lazy gaze shot out from that figure's body, directly falling on Hades' era's body. Hades' era held the spicy strip in his mouth, gently biting it. After biting off a piece, he continued to hold the spicy strip in his mouth. His gaze also rose, meeting the gaze of that lazy figure. Why didn't you become the lord of the netherworld? Why did you disguise yourself as a woman and sneak in a goddess city? The female King Biluo flipped and stood up. Her scarlet robe fluttered, raising a wave of fragrance. Looking at Hades' era, the female King Biluo instantly raised her red lips, asking playfully. Passing by, I came to find a friend, replied Hades' era with the spicy strip in his mouth. Friend? There isn't anyone in Goddess City who is the lord of the netherworld's friend. Oh, you mean that little chef? The female King Biluo narrowed her eyes. That's right. Sister, you're still so smart. Hades' era grinned. Don't talk nonsense. Are you sure you're not here for the god-vanishing mountain spring of life like your dissolute father? King Biluo lifted her chin and looked at Hades' era. Hades' era walked around the hall and found a spot to lean against. Of course not. At that time, my father borrowed the spring of life to see if it could wash away the curse on Nethery. Of course, he also slept with your mother while he was at it. Nether King Erha shrugged, looking as though he was also very helpless. King Biluo snorted. His figure flickered, streaked across the void, and appeared in front of Hades' era in an instant. His scarlet red robe fluttered, and a terrifying pressure suddenly spread out. Hades' era froze, and the spicy strip in his mouth trembled. Empress Biluo stretched out a finger. Her fingernail was painted red, and it was incomparably beautiful. She pointed at Hades' era's glabella. It made Hades' era take several steps back. He leaned against the wall. As the lord of the netherworld, why is your cultivation so weak? How can you bear the responsibility of the lord of the netherworld? The female King Biluo walked barefoot on the ice-cold floor of the palace. Hades' era was not angry, chuckling with a spicy strip in his mouth. The female King Biluo of Goddess City was powerful. There was no doubt about it. After all, she had the god-vanishing mountain, a forbidden land in Earth prison. Of course, it was also because he, the lord of the netherworld, was weak. You are gluttonous and lazy. You have to be prepared for danger in times of peace. Nether prison is like a sharp spear hanging above hell. Who knows when it will poke a big hole in hell? Don't you feel it all? The female King Biluo clasped her hands behind her back, looking at Hades' era with a little disappointment. Her tone carried a little helplessness. Let's not talk about this. My friend needs to enter God-vanishing mountain to borrow the spring of life to water the Heaven Tree seed. Heaven Chief Realm has already been invaded by Nether Prison, and the Heaven Tree is sleeping. It needs to be awakened by the Heaven Tree seed. Otherwise, if the sacred level experts of Nether Prison break through the barrier of Heaven Chief Realm will completely fall. Hades' era furrowed his brows and waved his hand, changing the topic. Heaven Chief Realm? This name sounds familiar, but what does it have to do with I? The spring of life is a peerless treasure. How can it be borrowed so easily? The female King Biluo clasped her hands behind her back as she said indifferently. I've said it before. If that little chef's imperial feast can satisfy me, I will naturally bring him into God-vanishing mountain. Whether he can get the spring of life will depend on his luck. If he can't satisfy me, then he will be chased out of Goddess City, the female King Biluo said. Wanting to obtain I's approval for the imperial feast is not as simple as that little chef thinks. Hades' era leaned on the pillar, curling his lips. The so-called imperial feast is 70% celebration and 30% sacrifice. If he can obtain the approval of that woman in God-vanishing mountain, will you still stop him? You know so much. The female king Biluo glared at Hades' era. In Goddess City, the way to give birth to the next generation was actually to rely on the spring of life. There were no men in Goddess City, but when the women of Goddess City reached a certain age, they would go to the sacrificial clan palace to receive a portion of the spring of life that was prepared with a secret recipe. After drinking the spring of life, the women of Goddess City would be able to bear a child for 10 months, giving birth to a newborn. And the newborns were basically all women. Like this, it was like a reincarnation cycle. It was unknown how long Goddess City had existed, but in this city, women had already become the leaders. Although the old Hades Tenzang had slept with the female king Biluo's mother, the female king Biluo was still born from the spring of life. She was not related to Hades' era by blood. However, the brotherly love between them did not disappear. The two of them chatted for a long time in the main hall. The female king Biluo taught Hades' era some of the ways and thoughts of being a ruler. Hades' era also listened seriously. One was willing to teach, and the other was willing to listen. Time passed just like that. Goddess City, Imperial Palace Kitchen, it had been a day and a night. Chef Jing Yuan was still standing at the door. From time to time, she would turn her head to look inside. Seeing that there was no movement at all, she couldn't help but furrow her brows. She felt that it had been a long time. It shouldn't take that much time to memorize those recipes. Creak. All of a sudden, just as Jing Yuan's imagination was running wild, the tightly shut door finally opened. As soon as the door was opened, the noisy atmosphere in the kitchen blew over, making Bu Fong a little dazed. In the kitchen, many chefs were busy cooking and processing the ingredients. After all, this imperial palace's kitchen had to support the food of the entire Goddess City. Bu Fong walked out, his face calm. Jing Yuan looked at Bu Fong, her eyes filled with hope. Have you finished reading the recipes? Have you memorized the cooking methods of the recipes? Asked Jing Yuan. I've memorized them. Bu Fong nodded. To Bu Fong, he could basically understand the 18 dishes with just a glance. The reason why he spent so much time inside was because he wanted to improve these dishes. Because in his eyes, the dishes in these recipes were full of flaws, including the 3 sacrificial dishes that Jing Yuan told him could not be changed in the slightest. Time is pressing. Should we start to prepare the ingredients now? Jing Yuan looked at Bu Fong, asking. After all, Bu Fong was the chef now, and she was just an assistant to help Bu Fong. In the previous imperial feast, she was the chef. She was used to giving orders, so it was a little troublesome to make changes in such a short time. Bu Fong clasped his hands, not answering Jing Yuan's question. This made Jing Yuan slightly furrow her brows. Bu Fong clasped his hands, pacing around the kitchen. Not long after, he circled the entire kitchen. He had a panoramic view of the entire kitchen and was very clear about it. He gently exhaled. Bu Fong looked at Jing Yuan. You go and prepare the ingredients. As for the others in the kitchen, chase them all out, Bu Fong said casually. His voice was not loud, but in that instant, it resounded through the entire kitchen, making all the people who were busy in the kitchen stop what they were doing. Everyone turned to look at him, puzzled. The helpers in the kitchen were all women. Moreover, they were all middle-aged women. When they heard that Bu Fong wanted to chase them out, they were instantly displeased. Each of them stopped what they were doing, glaring at Bu Fong. Don't think that we won't dare to do anything to you just because you're a man. We, the helpers, cook in the kitchen every day. We're also the ones who prepare the imperial feast every year. Why do you have to chase us out? Even Her Majesty, the Empress, can't chase us out. You're a man. Who do you think you are? The imperial feast can't be completed without us. Those middle-aged women were very stubborn. They glared at Bu Fong, shouting in dissatisfaction. Jing Yuan's face was very unsightly. However, Bu Fong was very calm. He just looked indifferently at the group of women chattering nonstop. After a long time, Bu Fong opened his mouth. Are you done talking? If you're done, then leave. I'm the head chef of this imperial feast. My words count. Bu Fong raised his eyes slightly, looking at the group of people, his face expressionless. The group of women was instantly flustered, not knowing what to say. The so-called head chef was the chef in charge of a feast. He held the absolute right to speak in the kitchen. In the past, because of Jing Yuan's weak character, these women were used to it. However, this year it was Bu Fang's turn. His domineering attitude made them speechless for a moment. Do you know what a head chef is? If you don't know, go back and understand before coming back to talk to me. Now, I'll count to 3. Except for Jing Yuan, the rest of you, leave the kitchen, Bu Fang said in a cold tone. 3. The expressions of the women below suddenly changed. They gritted their teeth. They were really unwilling to give up. They really didn't want to give up the qualification to be the assistant chefs of this imperial feast. After all, when the imperial feast was held, if they wanted to, they could really get a lot of benefits. In the past, when Jing Yuan was the head chef, she had a weak character, which encouraged their unscrupulous character. However, now that there was a new head chef, he actually wanted to drive them out of the kitchen without saying a word. How could they tolerate this? 2. Bu Fang's eyes were indifferent, without the slightest emotion. Jing Yuan stood aside, not knowing what to do, rubbing her fists. Many people had started to walk out of the kitchen, but there were still people who were unwilling. 1. Bu Fang spat out the last word. In the kitchen, almost all the people had left, leaving only 2 or 3 people who were unwilling, staring at Bu Fang. Looking at these 2 or 3 people who were unwilling, the corners of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. His mind flickered, and the formation appeared. Xiao Bai's figure suddenly appeared behind him. After swallowing the lightning, Xiao Bai's aura seemed to become more condensed. Xiao Bai, these troublemakers, you know how to deal with them, right? Bu Fang said casually. With a swoosh, Xiao Bai's figure dashed out, the metal wings on his back spreading. The sound of lightning crackling resounded unceasingly. Light flashed in the mechanical eyes. Troublemakers will be stripped as an example to others. The mechanical voice rang out. The remaining 2 or 3 stubborn middle-aged women, who still wanted to get some benefits, were scared out of their wits, rolling and crawling out of the kitchen. Xiao Bai, guard the kitchen outside. No one is allowed to enter. Troublemakers, you know, Bu Fang said. A moment later, Bu Fang's eyes turned, falling on the anxious Jing Yuan. You go and find all the ingredients needed for the imperial feast. Within today, prepare all the ingredients. Bu Fang's words were calm, but it scared Jing Yuan. She hurried to turn around and leave. Jing Yuan had never seen such a domineering chef. It made her a little scared. Even though she was the head chef, she would talk and laugh with the assistant chefs when she cooked in the past. However, Bu Fang's behavior had completely subverted her view of the world. Looking at Jing Yuan turning around and leaving, Bu Fang twitched the corner of his mouth. Not everyone can be my assistant chefs. At least, not a group of people with evil intentions. Jing Yuan's body stiffened, and she was even more scared. Head Chef Bu was so scary. He was simply the legendary kitchen tyrant. Chapter 1136. Bu Fang didn't care what they called him. Moreover, in his opinion, kitchen tyrant wasn't a bad title to be called. As a chef, if he didn't have absolute control in the kitchen, how could he be called an excellent chef? As a head chef, if he was in charge of a group of helpers who didn't listen to orders and always thought about cutting corners, what would become of the kitchen? It would definitely be a mess. During Bu Fang's inspection, Bu Fang found that at least half of the helpers had cut corners in the process of processing ingredients. In other words, they were lazy and skipped a lot of steps. Because this group of people often cooked in the kitchen, they were used to processing ingredients. This kind of processing always inadvertently skipped some steps. For example, some ingredients needed to be peeled. These helpers did peel them, but there was still some residue left in the peel. Moreover, after peeling, they didn't wash it carefully. Others might not notice this process, or they might think that it wasn't a big deal. However, for Bu Fang, these steps couldn't be skipped. As he always strived for perfection, he was very strict with his culinary skills. You could choose not to do it, but if you cut corners, you couldn't do it. Jing Yuan had a good temper, so these people were unscrupulous. Bu Fang didn't have a good temper. When cooking, his temper was really bad. It was fine if he cooked alone, but if there was a helper, Any mistake made by the helper would be reflected in his eyes. Looking at Jing Yuan's back as she left, Bu Feng's face didn't change a bit. For Bu Feng, cooking was a kind of art. When it came to art, he always needed to strive for perfection. Bu Feng pulled a chair and sat down, his brows slightly furrowed. In his mind, the 3 sacrificial dishes recipes that he had seen in that room appeared. Jing Yuan had told him that the sacrificial dishes couldn't be changed. However, in Bu Feng's eyes, although these 3 dishes looked perfect, they still had flaws. If he could fix and fill in those flaws, the texture and taste of these 3 dishes would be even better. The 3 dishes of the sacrificial ceremony had very pleasant names: Spring Wind, Summer Wound, Autumn Astringency. Who came up with the names of these 3 dishes? It was indeed quite interesting. Bu Feng stroked his chin. Just from the names of these 3 dishes, Bu Feng could sense a faint sadness. Of course, this might just be Bu Feng's own feelings. Bu Feng didn't move. He just sat on the chair and brewed his emotions. There were about 5 days left. Within these 5 days, he had to find and process all the ingredients required for the dish. Furthermore, the 3 dishes needed for the ritual had to be cooked in advance. There were many requirements, and time was tight. Time flew by quickly. In the imperial palace, the news about Bu Feng spread like wildfire. The news that Bu Feng had chased all the assistant chefs out of the kitchen quickly spread throughout the imperial palace and even got a city. Many people learned of this news, and everyone's expression became a little strange and playful. He had chased all the assistant chefs out of the kitchen. What did that man want to do? 18 dishes. Did he want to cook them alone? Oh, he had also asked Chef Jing Yuan to help him. However, even with Chef Jing Yuan, there were only 2 of them. 2 people wanted to cook all the dishes of the imperial feast. It wasn't easy at all, and the chefs who were chased out of the kitchen by Bu Feng started to mock and ridicule Bu Feng. Their disdainful words echoed unceasingly. For a moment, the entire imperial palace didn't have a good impression of the imperial feast. When the female king Biluo got the news, half a day had passed. He really chased all the assistant chefs out of the kitchen. Hearing the maid's words, the female King Biluo's face revealed a playful expression. Interesting. I'm suddenly looking forward to the imperial feast. The female King Biluo's red lips parted, revealing her pearl-white teeth. The maid was puzzled. Your Majesty, do you think that man can cook all the dishes of the imperial feast alone? If he didn't chase those assistant chefs out, I wouldn't have such high expectations. The queen said. The maidservant was confused. How can I not know what kind of people they are? In the past, I didn't have much expectations for the imperial feast. I just muddled through it. But this year, there might be some changes. If nothing changes, it would be a waste of I's expectations. The female King Biluo lazily leaned against the spirit gold throne, her beautiful figure instantly forming a perfect arc. Half a day later, only then did Jing Yuan hurriedly rush back from the distance. From afar, she saw Xiao Bai standing at the door. Instantly, she felt a little uneasy. The aura that Xiao Bai had released made her a little afraid. However, she still plucked up her courage and pushed open the kitchen door, entering. In the kitchen, Bu Feng sat on the chair, pondering. In his mind, he was constantly simulating the cooking process. All of a sudden, his eyes moved, looking into the distance. There, Jing Yuan had returned. Jing Yuan closed the kitchen door, walking toward Bu Feng. Seeing Bu Feng, she didn't say anything. With a wave of her hand, a big pile of ingredients appeared in the cooking material area. Here are 2 portions of the imperial feast ingredients. So head chef Bu has 2 chances. If you fail once, you could try again. Many of the ingredients are precious, so I can only collect 2 portions in a short time. Jing Yuan looked at Bu Feng, saying. Bu Feng stood up, clasping his hands as he walked to the cooking material area. He rummaged through the ingredients, observing them for a while. Then, he turned to look at Jing Yuan, saying, go find some green jade fruit and purple cloud grass. Huh? Green jade fruit and purple cloud grass? Jing Yuan was a little surprised, as though she didn't understand. Among the 18 imperial feast dishes, there doesn't seem to be any dish that needs these ingredients. Jing Yuan furrowed her brows as she said. All of a sudden, as soon as she finished speaking, her body stiffened, because when she raised her head, her eyes met Bu Fong's indifferent gaze. I'll go now. Thinking about how Bu Fong had chased away all the chefs because of a disagreement, Jing Yuan's small face became deathly pale. This was the kitchen tyrant, and she actually questioned his actions. A wave of fear suddenly welled up in her heart. Jing Yuan turned around and ran away, disappearing in a short while. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth instantly twitched. This woman. Is she stupid or what? After Jing Yuan left, Bu Fong's gaze fell on the ingredients, gently exhaling. Rolling up the sleeves of the vermilion robe, Bu Fong began to prepare the ingredients. Of course, what he needed to do now were the ingredients for the 3 sacrificial dishes. A flash of saber light flashed past. Bu Fong's eyes instantly became sharp. A curtain of stars appeared, and a meteor fell. In the next instant, a blade light shot out. Those ingredients all soared up into the sky. Under the impact of the blade light, their shapes constantly changed. Skin flew everywhere, and the stalks fell. Shredding, cutting, slicing. Everything was done perfectly. After cutting the ingredients, Bu Fong began to wash them. The water in Goddess City was a kind of clear water with dense spirit energy. It wasn't any worse than Bu Fong's heavenly mountain spirit spring water. Thus, Bu Fong didn't change to another water, directly washing them. Swish! In a huge kitchen, only the sound of Bu Fong washing the ingredients could be heard. After a long time, Jing Yuan hurried back. The 2 ingredients that Bu Fong had mentioned were really rare. She had searched through the ingredient warehouse to find them. When she pushed open the door and entered the kitchen, she saw the freshly processed ingredients on the blue and white porcelain plates, with sparkling water droplets dripping from them. Jing Yuan was slightly stunned on the spot. How long had it been? Bu Fong had already prepared all the ingredients needed to cook the sacrificial dishes. Why are you standing there like a fool? Give me the ingredients. Then you go and prepare the other ingredients. Remember, you can't be careless when handling the ingredients. Bu Fong said. Jing Yuan came back to her senses, hurriedly handing the 2 ingredients to Bu Fong. The green jade fruit was a green fruit. After Bu Fong received it, he used the dragon bone kitchen knife to cut it into 2 halves. Taking out the 2 halves of the fruit, he grabbed it with one hand and squeezed it. The green juice was squeezed out, dripping it into a blue and white porcelain bowl. As for the purple cloudgrass, Bu Fong opened his mouth and spat out a ball of white flame, burning the purple cloudgrass. The purple cloudgrass turned into a ball of purple liquid. The liquid of the purple cloudgrass was also poured into a blue and white porcelain bowl. The ingredients for the 3 sacrificial dishes were all prepared. The green jade fruit and the purple cloudgrass don't seem to be the ingredients needed for the sacrificial dishes, right? Jing Yuan looked at Bu Fong as she processed the ingredients. Bu Fong didn't reply immediately. Instead, he looked at Jing Yuan. Just watch first. You'll know later. Bu Fong said. In the next instant, the white tiger stove floated and the black turtle constellation wok was placed on it. A ball of white flame shot out, drilling into the stove, burning fiercely. The scorching temperature suddenly burst out. Bu Fong used a velvet rope to tie his hair, starting to cook. The ladle spun in Bu Fong's hand. Bu Fong's mental energy, which was as vast as the sea, swept out, and the vermilion robe fluttered. Jing Yuan, who was watching from afar, was a little stunned. Bu Fong's movements were as smooth as flowing water, dazzling people. One of the 3 sacrificial dishes, spring breeze. This was a vegetable dish. According to the records in the recipe, this dish was cooked with a mixture of 32 types of spirit medicines and immortal ingredients. One of them was unique, and they couldn't be mixed together. When one ate it, there were 32 different tastes, and it was an extremely great test of a chef's control. It seemed to symbolize the revival of all things in the spring breeze, the feeling of hundreds of flowers blooming. This was the meaning of the so-called spring breeze. Boom, boom. The flame soared to the sky. The scarlet flame in the black turtle constellation wok shot up to the sky. The ingredients were put into the wok. As the wok was flipped and stir-fried, each of them shot up to the sky. The oil splashed, moving brilliantly. Gently shaking the wok, all the ingredients fell into the ladle, scooped them out, and placed them on a porcelain plate. Under the control of his mental energy, the arrangement of the ingredients was very exquisite. The hot oil boiled, pouring down, and the sizzling sound echoed unceasingly. As a result, the dish seemed to burst out a dazzling light. Boom! Boom! Above the sky, thunderclouds rolled over. The lightning punishment was coming. Of course, to Bu Fong, the so-called lightning punishment had been handled by Xiao Bai. This time, little White should be able to eat its fill. Jing Yuan watched as if she was intoxicated. Bu Fong's cooking allowed her to learn a lot just by watching. Among them was the control of the heat and the degree of cooking ingredients maturity. She was shocked by the beauty of the heavens. In the past, she could only vaguely control these things. However, Bu Fong's cooking was precise to the extreme. To reach this level, he needed to cultivate. She was still far from it. All of a sudden, Jing Yuan's eyes changed. She suddenly realized that Bu Fong had actually poured the juice of the green jade fruit into the pot and was planning to pour it over the dish that was already laid out on the plate. This behavior was not recorded in the recipe. Instantly, her face changed. Head Chef Bu, no, the sacrificial dish cannot be changed. Jing Yuan subconsciously opened her mouth to call out. However, Bu Fong just glanced at her indifferently. His hands didn't stop moving. The dark green liquid splashed out. Chapter 11:37. Jing Yuan's face turned unsightly. She had said more than once that the sacrificial dish must be cooked according to the recipe, and there must not be any changes. Even during the cooking process, there must not be any mistakes, because once there were any mistakes, it could easily change the taste of the dish. But head chef Bu, he actually directly added new ingredients and made changes to the recipe. This was a very bold move. Jing Yuan hurriedly stopped what she was doing, shaking off the water stains on her hands as she walked over. A rich aroma permeated the air. The dish, which was emitting a dark green radiance, blinded her eyes for a moment. It was a very beautiful dish. Jing Yuan had to admit that, at least if the recipe had not been changed, the dish would definitely not be like this. You. For a moment, Jing Yuan was somewhat speechless. Bu Fong looked at Jing Yuan, and the corners of his mouth slightly rose. He reached out his hand, gently patting Jing Yuan's head. This made the latter freeze on the spot. As an assistant chef, the most important thing is to believe in the head chef. Bu Fong looked at Jing Yuan, saying. She felt a gentle tap on her head. Jing Yuan's face instantly turned red. Even she did not know why her face became so red at this moment. Jing Yuan opened her mouth, but she did not know what to say. Okay, you go back and continue processing the ingredients. I know what you want to say, but you don't have to worry. Since I dare to change the recipe, I naturally have confidence, said Bu Fong. Jing Yuan blushed. At this moment, she did not know anything. She walked back to her seat in a daze, picked up the kitchen knife, and continued processing the ingredients. After a long time, she came to her senses, looking at Bu Fong. The sacrificial dish was directly offered to the high priestess of the sacrificial sect palace. She could not afford to make any mistakes. It should be known that before Jing Yuan, there was once a head chef in charge of the imperial feast, and he arbitrarily changed the recipe of the sacrificial dish. During the imperial feast, he was discovered by the high priestess and killed on the spot. From then on, no one dared to make any changes to the sacrificial dishes. However, head chef Bu Jing Yuan's face was a little conflicted, but looking at Bu Fong's confident look, Jing Yuan also felt a little helpless. I'll secretly cook another portion tonight. If head chef Bu's portion doesn't work, my portion can still save the day. At least head chef Bu won't end up like the previous chef. As she thought about it, Jing Yuan calmed herself down and continued to cook. Rumble. Above the vault of heaven, dark clouds swept over and shrouded the entire palace. In the palace, Yu raised her head and looked at the dark sky. She couldn't help but murmur, "Bufong has begun to cook." This is the manifestation of the will of the Great Path. This little chef's dish is really not ordinary. It can actually be sensed by the will of the Great Path in Goddess City. The female King Biluo supported her chin with one hand, looking at the pitch-black vault of heaven as she couldn't help but say. Hades' Era sat in the distance, holding a spicy strip in his mouth as he crossed his legs. Bufong young man's cooking skills are beyond your imagination. Hades' Era said proudly. You agreed with Bufong's words, constantly nodding her head. From this night onwards, the black thunderclouds above Goddess City continued to appear. The rumbling sounds resounded unceasingly, accompanied by the peals of thunder. Everyone in Goddess City was anxious and fearful. Everyone looked in the direction of the imperial palace in awe. On the day of the imperial feast, such a strange phenomenon actually appeared. It was enough to make everyone in Goddess City tremble. 5 days passed quickly. When the last lightning bolt fell, after it was blocked by Xiao Bai, whose body was covered in flashing lightning arcs, the thunderclouds finally dispersed. After blocking the thunderclouds, Xiao Bai sat on the ground. Every part of his body was covered in lightning arcs. His mechanical eyes twinkled, as though he was digesting it. After digesting these lightning punishments, Xiao Bai's power would definitely increase tremendously. Of course, digesting these lightning punishments required time. On this day, Goddess City, sacrificial sect palace with a squeak, the window was pushed open, and a wooden frame was placed against the corner of the window. The high priestess wore a white robe, clasping her hands as she stood in front of the window. Her eyes were deep as she looked at the disappearing black clouds. In the room, light blue smoke rose from the incense burner, constantly drifting. The back of the white robe was very long, spreading out in the room like a flower bud that was about to bloom. Is it over? The day of the imperial feast is finally here. The day of the prophecy is getting closer and closer. The high priestess mumbled softly. Her voice was so soft that only she could hear it. Outside, someone knocked on the door. The high priestess turned around. The door was pushed open. Wei Jin was wearing a military uniform, standing at the door with a solemn expression. Her face was painted with exquisite makeup, which made her look even more solemn. High Priestess, His Majesty asked this humble servant to invite the High Priestess to the palace to enjoy the imperial feast together. Wei Jin said respectfully. She raised her hands, clasping them together as she slightly bowed. The High Priestess walked forward, quickly arriving in front of the incense burner, sitting cross-legged. Got it, the High Priestess calmly replied. Then, she waved her hand, and a makeup box appeared. She opened it, took out a wooden comb, and began to dress herself up. The High Priestess, who usually did not wear any makeup, had to put on exquisite makeup when she attended an event. It was unknown when 2 maids had appeared in the room. The maids were holding beautiful clothes and silver jewelry, kneeling beside the High Priestess. The High Priestess' movements were slow and gentle. She gently raised her eyebrow pencil, decorating her immortal-like face. Along with the makeup, her coldness had a trace of nobility and charm. Swish, after the makeup was done, the maids carefully put silver jewelry on the High Priestess. Her black hair was coiled up, and the jewelry decorated it, accentuating her noble temperament. The High Priestess stood up, spreading her arms. Instantly, her white robe slid down from her body. Her skin, which was as soft as milk, slowly emerged from the slipping clothes. The 2 maids took small steps, pulling open the embroidered clothes and putting them on the High Priestess. She tied them with a belt and put on jewelry. Outside the door, Wei Jin still maintained her respectful posture. When the High Priestess finished dressing up and slowly walked out of the room, she took a step back, following behind the High Priestess. In Goddess City, if Her Majesty the Empress had the highest status, then the High Priestess was right below her. Although Wei Jin was the great general of the guards, she did not dare to neglect the High Priestess. Ring, ring. A light sound rang out. 2 maids carried a scepter with 9 golden rings, coming to the High Priestess' side, handing it to her. The high priestess grabbed the scepter, her eyes instantly becoming cold and aloof. "Let's go to the imperial palace," the high priestess said. Wei Jin and her subordinates all replied, "Yes." The imperial palace's gates opened wide. Streams of people surged, coming and going in an endless stream. The high-ranking officials of Goddess City, as well as many soldiers, were all rushing to the imperial palace. And Goddess City was also brightly lit, with smoke lingering in the air. On the streets, little girls were playing and young girls were laughing. It was extremely lively. The day of the imperial feast was a day of celebration in Goddess City. In front of the imperial palace, many high-ranking officials were wearing luxurious clothes. After meeting each other, they cupped their hands and greeted each other, congratulating each other and wishing each other well. The maids appeared in groups, lining up to welcome the high-ranking officials. Dami Hayashi was wearing a green armor, laughing loudly as she came from outside the hall. Her wheat-colored skin made her look full of heroic spirit. Chi-Si's red cloak fluttered, and her scarlet armor was burning like a raging flame. The green dragon spread its wings, the scarlet dragon roared, and the black dragon emitted an astonishing pressure. There was also a woman riding a winged tiger beast. This was one of the 5 great armies of Goddess City, the great general of the beast army. She was in charge of the hundreds of beasts in Goddess City. All the high-ranking officials arrived and entered the imperial palace. The spacious imperial palace had already been decorated. In the center of the imperial palace, there was a spirit gold dining table. The dining table was round, and in the center was a round plate. The sides and legs of the dining table were carved with gorgeous patterns. Around the dining table, there were a total of 15 chairs. They represented the 15 people with high positions in Goddess City. On both sides of the huge dining table, there were many small dining tables. Each small dining table corresponded to a position. On the throne at the highest point of the imperial palace, the female King Biluo was also dressed splendidly. Her makeup was exquisite, and she was so beautiful that it made people stunned. Her red lips were like raging flames, burning like fire. She sat high up, looking down. You and Hades' era were not far away, sitting close to each other at the small dining table. Hades' era, with a spicy strip in his mouth, looked at you and said, "When my dad entered Goddess City, he seemed to have also participated in this imperial feast. After so many years, I was fortunate enough to participate in this imperial feast. TSK, TSK, TSK. Don't you think this is fate?" You glanced at Hades' era. If you didn't dress as a woman and enter Goddess City, do you think you could participate in the imperial feast? Hades' era glared at her. "You little girl, even if I swaggered in, I could still participate in the imperial feast." You glanced at him and sneered. That look made Hades' era so angry that he almost jumped up and wanted to argue with you. However, as the sound of the harp resounded, outside the imperial palace, flower petals fluttered. A large group of people slowly arrived. The sound of the golden rings colliding, the sound of the harp, and the female chanting resounded endlessly. Outside the palace, the high priestess had a solemn expression as she arrived barefooted. Every official stood up, solemnly looking at the high priestess. Everyone in Goddess City had to be respectful towards the high priestess of the worship sect. This was because the high priestess was the only existence in Goddess City that could communicate with the peerless existence in the god Vanishing Mountain. Even the Empress could not do so. The Empress controlled the authority to enter and exit the god Vanishing Mountain, while the High Priestess was in charge of contacting the peerless expert in the god Vanishing Mountain. Towards this, everyone had respect in their hearts. It was said that the High Priestess and the Empress were blood sisters. The female King Biluo stood up from her seat, looking at the High Priestess who was leisurely walking over. Her face instantly became solemn. She walked down from the throne, slowly approaching the High Priestess. After a brief greeting, she brought the High Priestess to sit. Sitting on the huge spirit gold dining table, the High Priestess sat on her left. The High Priestess sat on her left. Chi-Si, Lin Damii, Hei Mu, Wei Jin, and the other generals all took their seats. The other officials also took their seats. Very quickly, the 15 seats were all filled. On the dining table, the atmosphere was stagnant. The high priestess was cold and arrogant, while the empress was noble and noble. Everyone looked at the two of them, their gazes revealing a respectful expression. And at the small dining table at the side, the other officials also took their seats. The high priestess stood up, stretching out her white palm. Her fingers constantly formed seals, and very quickly a strange array was formed. That array shot out, landing in the middle of the spirit gold dining table. Standing at the entrance of the palace, a maid dressed in luxurious clothes instantly bowed, her voice resounding throughout the entire palace. Goddess City's imperial feast begins. Her voice fell. At the side of the palace, the doors opened, and maids carrying dishes came out one after another. Each of the dishes carried by the maids were placed on blue and white porcelain plates, covered with silver round lids. Jing Yuan was dressed splendidly, with exquisite makeup on her face, looking quite beautiful. Her hands were placed together, above her navel, as she walked out with the maids serving the dishes. Dishes were placed on the spirit gold dining table one after another. Meeting the gazes of the 15 people at the spirit gold dining table, even Jing Yuan, who had hosted several imperial feast sessions, felt her heart tighten. The first item of the imperial feast, 9 appetizers, open. Appetizers? Everyone was stunned. Since when did the imperial feast have an appetizer? Just as everyone was puzzled, one by one, the maids rolled up their sleeves, revealing their white wrists. Their delicate hands pressed on the silver round lids, gently opening the lids. Everyone's gazes, which were already filled with anticipation, landed. Beams of light shot out from those dishes. The light shot into the sky, and the fragrance filled the air. Chapter 1138. 9 appetizers? When Jing Yuan shouted those words, the entire audience was stunned. In the past, the imperial feast would start with dishes being served one by one according to the menu. There was no such thing as an appetizer. More importantly, what was the so-called appetizer? Many people thought about it, and they understood. This appetizer should be the main chef of the imperial feast. He wanted to stimulate their appetites, so that they could focus their attention on the dish. However, this led to an uncertain factor, and that was the appetizer had to be able to stimulate everyone's appetite. Otherwise, it would backfire, which would make people unhappy. The maids stretched out their delicate hands, their other hands holding onto their sleeves. Under Jing Yuan's order, they lifted the lid. Beams of light shot out from within, attracting everyone's attention. The first appetizer, spirit pickled radish. The maid unveiled the first dish. The sound of a harp echoed. Everyone's gazes landed on it. Even the cold and arrogant high priestess and the noble female king Biluo couldn't help but look at the first dish. As the first dish, it had to be stunning. And what would Bufang choose as an appetizer? Everyone was curious. In the distance, Hades' era held a spicy strip in his mouth. He craned his head, his eyes curious. Yu was the same. She also wanted to know what Bufang would choose as his first appetizer. However, as soon as the lid was lifted, a unique aroma spread out. Spirit pickled radish? Everyone was bewildered. Then, a wave of aroma spread out, surging over them. Huh! Everyone's face changed. They took a deep breath. With just a sniff, the sour smell drilled into their nostrils, stirring their taste buds and causing their mouths to involuntarily secrete saliva. A plate of radish. Is it really just a plate of radish? A white radish? That's a dish? Are you kidding me? On the spirit gold dining table, everyone had a stupefied expression. They never imagined that the first dish would actually be a plate of white radish. Jing Yuan took in everyone's expressions. Seeing that everyone was so surprised, she felt relieved. As for doubts about this dish, a playful smile appeared on Jing Yuan's face. The concept of an appetizer was added by head chef Bu. Back then, she had also doubted it. Since it was the imperial feast, it was only natural that the 18 main dishes of the imperial feast would be served first. However, head chef, Bu, actually proposed such a concept. Most importantly, the first dish was actually a plate of radishes. This made Jing Yuan even more doubtful. However, under Bu Feng's playful expression, she ate a piece of carrot that she gave in. This is Spirit Sour Radish, an appetizer from head chef Bu's collection. The quantity is limited, so eat it and cherish it. Jing Yuan didn't explain too much and left a lot of suspense. Everyone at the Spirit Gold dining table looked at each other. Who cared if it was Spirit Sour Radish or Spirit Spicy Radish? Wasn't it still a radish? Such a grand imperial feast, and the first dish was a plate of radish. Was this right? The female King Biluo didn't say anything. Actually, contrary to the doubts of others, she had an estimate of Bu Feng's cooking. Since he dared to take out a plate of radish as the first dish, naturally, he had his reasons. Thus, the female King Biluo grabbed a pair of chopsticks. Those were silver chopsticks, different from other chopsticks. The tip of the queen's chopsticks was carved with an exquisite phoenix sculpture. She picked up a piece of radish. The radish was crystal clear. There was also a transparent juice flowing on it. The radish was cut into shreds by Bu Feng, and each shred was the same size. A unique sour smell permeated the radish. This sour smell didn't make people burp, but left a deep impression. Picking up the radish, under everyone's gazes, the queen opened her fiery red lips, revealing her pearly white teeth as she took a bite of the radish. The sweet and sour taste instantly spread in her mouth. That taste wasn't very strong, but it instantly stimulated the taste buds, causing the queen's brows to involuntarily furrow. This taste, crunch, crunch. After the queen furrowed her brows, her eyes suddenly lit up. This sweet and sour taste was unexpectedly good. Stuffing the whole radish into her mouth, she chewed. Then, she reached out with her chopsticks to pick up the second one. Delicious! The queen exclaimed. It was just a radish. How delicious could it be? Everyone was suspicious. However, after everyone picked up a radish and put it into their mouth, they became silent. That taste stimulated their taste buds, and even the tip of their noses couldn't help but have some sweat trickle down. It was so sour that their whole bodies trembled. So, King, delicious. Jing Yuan lightly laughed, then continued. The second appetizer, sour and spicy diced lotus root. Everyone's gaze turned, landing on the second appetizer that had just been opened. Another round of rotation, and the chopsticks were extended. The third appetizer, crystal phoenix claw. The fourth appetizer, abyssal chili strip. Jing Yuan announced the names of the dishes one by one. The 15 people on the table ate every dish, and they simply couldn't stop eating. Not only was the appetizer radish so delicious, but the other dishes that followed also made them exclaim in admiration. Whether it was the crystal phoenix claw or the abyssal chili strip, they were like cat claws, scratching their hearts, making them unable to free themselves. Abyssal chili strip? Hades Era held the chili strip in his mouth, his face filled with confusion and disbelief. Bu Feng, that young man, actually used his favorite chili strip as an appetizer? There was such a thing? The female King Biluo was also very surprised. She glanced at Hades Era, who was in the distance, and saw the chili strip in his mouth, and her heart was filled with curiosity. This thing could really be eaten? The chili strip was cut into small pieces by Bu Feng, and it was placed on the plate, emitting a dazzling radiance. The chili strip could be said to be the most fragrant among the appetizers, and they couldn't help but want to reach out their chopsticks. The female King Biluo picked up a chili strip. Her red lips pouted, and she stuffed the chili strip in her mouth, sucking it. Her tongue wrapped around the chili strip. The spicy taste of the chili strip instantly spread out. The Empress' eyes widened. This spicy taste, this texture, this taste seemed to penetrate deep into the bone. This was the chili strip. It was really too delicious. The Empress raised her head, chewing the chili strip in her mouth. Her red lips became even redder, and a trace of red appeared on her face. Her beautiful face showed a hint of intoxication. The Empress' appearance scared the people around her, and the High Priestess was even more puzzled. It was just a chili strip. Why did she look like she had taken drugs? Then the others began to eat. Then all 15 people at the table raised their heads, revealing an intoxicated expression. In the distance, Hades' hugged the spirit gold pillar, as if there was nothing left to live for. His head constantly knocked on the pillar, making banging noises. Eyes, chili strip. This group of barbaric women, how can they eat chili strips like this? How can the steps of eating chili strips be like this? 1 suck, 2 suck, 3 suck for suck. Suck, 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 suck. In and out. This is the correct way to eat chili strips. Hades' heart was dripping blood, and tears were flowing. The corner of Yu's mouth twitched. Bufong's chili strips were indeed very attractive. Back then, she had also been crazy for a while, but one time she ate too much. She was afraid of seeing chili strips, and from then on, she stopped eating chili strips. However, she still had to admit that Bufong's chili strips were definitely filled with a fatal attraction. The 9 appetizers were all uncovered, under the dumbfounded gazes of the surrounding people. The 15 people at the spirit gold dining table finished all the appetizers. The maids all sucked in a breath of cold air. It was the first time they saw adults eat so much. However, on the contrary, after finishing all 9 appetizers, they did not feel full at all. Instead, their stomachs were rumbling, and they could not wait to continue eating. Even the cold and arrogant high priestess, at this moment, was full of interest for the next dish. The corner of Chef Jing Yuan's mouth rose. Head Chef Bu's appetizers were effective. Cheering in her heart, Jing Yuan turned and entered the kitchen. After a while, she personally carried a dish, walking over from afar. The first dish of the imperial feast, jadeite taro spirit fruit. Jing Yuan's pleasant voice carried a trace of excitement, resounding throughout the entire hall. She took small steps, arriving in front of the spirit gold table, placing the blue and white porcelain plate on the table. The plates of appetizers on the table that had been eaten had already been removed by the maids. And on both sides of the independent seats, the appetizers began to be served. The order of dishes on both sides was staggered. Jadeite taro spirit fruit. This dish stunned everyone. This time, it should be the official dish of the imperial feast, right? Although the appetizer was not bad, it was still the 18 dishes that tested the head chef. And the first dish that Chef Jing Yuan read out was something that they had no impression of in the previous imperial feast. Chef Jing Yuan did not point it out. She grabbed the silver cover, suddenly opening it. Instantly, hot air surged up. A wave of dazzling golden light instantly shot out, filling everyone's eyes. When everyone saw the appearance of the dish clearly, they were in an uproar. That was because they were stunned. Even the female King Biluo's red lips were slightly parted, feeling a little incredulous. This was a dish that was full of three-dimensional feeling. The dish was steaming hot, and golden sugar threads were drawn in the air, forming a phoenix that seemed to be about to spread its wings and soar into the sky. In that phoenix's abdomen, there were pink spirit fruits floating inside. Under the light, this dish radiated a dazzling radiance. Seeing this dish, many people came to a sudden realization. They had eaten this dish before, but at that time, it didn't look like this. The sugar threads were round, wrapping the taro spirit fruit inside. It didn't give people a feeling of being stunned. The female King Biluo couldn't wait anymore. Women were born to love beauty. Such a beautiful dish made them inexplicably happy and excited. She reached out her silver chopsticks. Instantly, the floating taro spirit fruit was caught by the queen. Then, she pulled it out. As soon as she pulled it out, it instantly caused an uproar. Everyone took in a breath of cold air, because as the queen pulled it out, the taro spirit fruit actually had silk threads following it. It was as if she was pulling out fine silk threads. And as she pulled it out, the phoenix wings drawn by the sugar threads flapped, as if it was about to dance. Stunning. It was completely breathtaking. The female King Biluo's heart was filled with joy. A dish actually gave her such joy. It was really rare. Putting the dish into the bowl, the queen gently licked the taro spirit fruit. The taro spirit fruit, wrapped in the sugar, was incomparably sweet. It was as if there was an arrow shooting into the queen's heart. It made her face involuntarily blush. She softly let out a sigh. Her pearly white teeth opened, then bit down. Within the soft and tender texture, there was a kind of taro spirit fruit, soft and tender texture. The sweet, fragrant, and tender taste blended into one, bursting out at the same time. The queen chewed, sticking out her tongue to lick her red lips. Her joy was overflowing. The others had already seen it. This dish could actually have so many tricks. Chef Jing Yuan was also stunned. She didn't think that after head chef Bu's modification, the dish would be so earth-shattering. It made her salivate, wanted to take a bite. The high priestess looked at the queen. Without saying a word, she spun the spirit gold wheel. She reached out her chopsticks, picking up a piece of taro spirit fruit. Her pearly white teeth gently opened, biting down. Even someone as cold and arrogant as the high priestess couldn't help but let out a light hum. After that, the remaining 13 people at the table almost went crazy. The eyes of Chi Si and the others flashed. Many people in the surroundings were dumbfounded. This imperial feast seemed to be very different from the previous years. It made people full of anticipation. However, only Jing Yuan's face showed a hint of worry in her joy. She glanced at the high priestess, who was happily eating. Thinking about the sacrificial dish that head chef Bu had modified, her heart suddenly felt a little anxious. Chapter 1139. The jade shredded taro spirit fruit completely stunned everyone. After the empress and the high priestess tasted the dish, they revealed an intoxicated expression. Everyone went crazy. There were only 13 people left at the spirit gold dining table. Everyone couldn't wait to grab the spirit gold chopsticks, reaching for the jade shredded taro spirit fruit that was spreading its wings. Each person had one chopstick. Every time the chopstick landed, the jade shredded taro spirit fruit would be wrapped in golden sugar threads. The threads were thin, carrying a wave of sweet fragrance. As the sugar threads were stretched, the phoenix constantly flapped its wings. Everyone seemed to be able to hear the phoenix's cry. However, as the jade shredded taro spirit fruit was finished, the phoenix slowly withered. In the end, it became a pile of sugar threads, covering the blue and white porcelain bowl. Many people were a little unsatisfied, sticking out their tongues to lick their lips. Especially Dami Hayashi. She licked her lips, reaching out her chopsticks to search for the sugar threads in the bowl, as though she wanted to find another piece of jade shredded taro spirit fruit. But unfortunately, there was no more jade shredded taro spirit fruit. Bufong had strict control over the number of jade shredded taro spirit fruits. There were a total of 18 pieces, one for each person. Just right. The first dish had already stunned everyone. Everyone couldn't help but take a deep breath. They were looking forward to the next dish. There were still 17 dishes. 3 of them were sacrificial dishes. According to the rules, the sacrificial dishes should be served after the third dish. Jing Yuan asked the maid to take away the blue and white porcelain bowl on the table. Then, she turned around, stepping into the kitchen. She was about to bring out the second dish. At this moment, as the sound of the harp resounded, the diners at the side of the round table received their dishes one after another. Everyone had a piece of jade shredded taro spirit fruit on their plate. Of course, because there was only one piece of jade shredded taro spirit fruit, the sugar threads didn't transform into a phoenix. Although it wasn't as breathtaking as the appearance, the taste was still the same. Just as the surrounding diners were eating the jade shredded taro spirit fruit, Jing Yuan slowly walked over from afar. In her hand was a flat blue and white porcelain plate with a silver lid. Jing Yuan's lips curled into a smile as she walked slowly. As she appeared, everyone's gaze landed on her. Whether it was the officials at the Spirit Gold Round Table or the surrounding customers, everyone's gazes landed on her. Everyone was curious about what the second dish would be. Jing Yuan didn't leave any suspense. She placed the dish on the table, and everyone's eyes focused on it. The second dish of the imperial feast, Cola Flying Phoenix flying in the sky. Jing Yuan's words were very gentle. and there seemed to be a trace of excitement in her words. Yes, he was excited again. Every time she opened the lid of the imperial feast, she felt an indescribable excitement. Her body seemed to tremble slightly. He was excited because he had expectations in his heart. That was why he was excited and agitated. Kola Flying Phoenix? When the female King Biluo heard Jing Yuan say this name, she instantly furrowed her brows. Her Majesty didn't really like birds. Moreover, more importantly, in the previous imperial feast, there didn't seem to be such a dish. Could it be that Bufong, that man, had improved the recipe again? Just as the Empress was deep in thought, a wave of extremely dense aroma instantly filled the air. That aroma was fragrance. The aroma of meat and sweetness assaulted the nostrils. It was as if it had entered one's heart in an instant. The female King Biluo sniffed the slightly roasted meat aroma, and her eyes instantly lit up. She slightly tilted her head, looking at the pot lid that Jing Yuan slowly opened. A glazed luster burst forth from the blue and white porcelain plate. Then there was a dense aroma. That aroma seemed to have materialized. Along with the cry of a bird, the aroma seemed to have turned into a bird, rushing out from the gap of the pot lid, circling above the spirit gold table. Everyone's gazes were attracted to him. Is this aroma materializing? The simplest manifestation of the will of the great path. The high priestess' eyes slightly narrowed, her red lips slightly parting as she spoke. Naturally, everyone understood. However, at this moment, the crowd didn't pursue the reason why the aroma materialized. Instead, they were all staring at the blue and white porcelain plate. The aroma that filled the air made them continuously swallow their saliva. This aroma is too alluring. It feels more exciting than the shredded taro spirit fruit. I seem to be looking at a huge pile of roasted birds. Everyone chattered, expressing their emotions. The corners of Jing Yuan's mouth curled into a smile. She opened the lid and took a step back. In the next instant, the radiance dissipated and hot air rushed to the sky. Everyone's gaze froze as they sucked in a breath of cold air. On that blue and white porcelain plate, there were neatly arranged phoenix wings. These phoenix wings were dark brown, and a layer of thick sauce was poured over them. That sauce was boiling, slowly flowing on the surface, as though reflecting the glossy surface. These phoenix wings were fat and plump, and they were all meat. Placed on the blue and white porcelain plate, they formed a circle. In the middle, there was hot air rising, turning into a phoenix that spread its wings and flew. Everyone recognized what the ingredient in this phoenix wing was. It should be a hybrid blue luan bread in Goddess City. Everyone was incomparably shocked. They had never thought that a phoenix could be cooked like this. However, many people's faces suddenly became a little playful. It should be known that in Goddess City, everyone knew that Her Majesty the Empress hated to eat phoenix the most. In the previous years, in the Imperial Feast, the phoenix in the menu would be changed to dragon wings. In the end, this year, the head chef actually chose a phoenix again. Did he want to purposely offend the Empress? The second dish of the Imperial Feast, Kola Phoenix wings soaring to the sky. This dish is head chef Bu's secret recipe. Eat it and cherish it. Jing Yuan took a step back, slightly bowing as she said to everyone. The female King Biluo's gaze turned, looking at Jing Yuan. This little girl knew her habits. She didn't like to eat luan because the meat of luan always had a disgusting taste. Of course, this taste differed from person to person. Some people just like that kind of taste. Oof. If it doesn't taste good, then don't even think about getting the chance to enter the God-vanishing mountain. The female King Biluo's red lips rose proudly. Then, her elegant hands grabbed the chopsticks, moving towards the dark brown phoenix wing that was poured with sauce. The first time, she actually did not manage to pick it up. That wing seemed to be able to fly, very smooth. The main reason was because of the slippery sauce. It was unknown what that sauce was made of, but when she picked it up, it had a sweet taste, stimulating people's appetite. Picking up a piece of Kola Phoenix wing, she placed it into the bowl. The Empress gently pursed her red lips, her eyes a little curious. The cola in this dish's name. What exactly did it mean? As she clamped the wing, the Empress' fiery red lips slightly opened. Below her red lips were pearl-white teeth. Awoo! With a bite, a scalding hot taste burst forth from the wing. The Empress' red lips pressed against the wing, and that dark brown sauce instantly stained her red lips. Her teeth bit down on that wing's soft meat. The phoenix's skin was smooth and soft. Biting down, a gap was instantly bitten out. The meat was shredded, entering her mouth strand by strand. After taking a bite, he could actually see the bones within the flying phoenix wing. Ugh! The female King Biluo's eyes instantly lit up. This was phoenix meat? Why was it completely different from the taste in her memories? That disgusting taste had completely disappeared. Replacing it was a kind of sweet sauce taste, as well as the texture of the meat that made one's heart feel like it was going to melt. Hot air emerged from the gap that she had bitten out. The female King Biluo swallowed the wing meat, her eyes greedily looking at the rest of the phoenix wing. Opening her mouth, she began to chew again. The surrounding people were dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with fear. It was hard to imagine that the female King Biluo would actually chew on a piece of phoenix wing as if she was thirsty for it. It should be known that it had been 4 to 5 years since Her Majesty had eaten phoenix meat. That time, the Empress had taken a bite and spat out the phoenix meat. She had despised phoenix meat to the extreme. However, hiss, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. At this moment, everyone understood what was going on. This time's imperial feast was incredible. Nether King Erha was already grinning from ear to ear, drool dripping from his mouth. Bufong, that young man, is biased. He actually didn't take out such a good dish earlier. You nodded continuously, her pitch-black eyes twinkling. She agreed with Hades Era's point of view. The High Priestess looked at the Empress, who was chewing so happily. She pursed her lips, and her cold and arrogant face couldn't help but reveal a trace of curiosity. She stretched out her chopsticks, reaching for the phoenix wing. In the next instant, the chopsticks flew. Pairs of chopsticks fell, picking up the phoenix wing. Each of the high-ranking officials ate excitedly. With one bite, the soft and tender texture exploded. The sweet and fragrant sauce seemed to explode in their minds, leaving only one word: delicious. Jing Yuan was very satisfied with everyone's attitude. She didn't say anything, turning around and entering the kitchen once again. This time, she entered the kitchen, holding the third dish in her hands. And behind her, 3 maids, who were wearing luxurious ceremonial robes, respectfully walked out, carrying 3 blue and white porcelain plates covered with lids. These 3 dishes were obviously the sacrificial dishes. The entire palace suddenly resounded with the sound of harps, and the ringing of bells continued unceasingly. The sound of metal clashing lingered in the ears. Coupled with the group of high-ranking officials crazily eating the phoenix wing on the spirit gold dining table, the scene was extremely unharmonious and strange. The female King Biluo had already eaten a bowl of phoenix wing. Her mouth pouted, and with a soft puff, a thin and long bone was spat out, falling on the table. Sticking out her pink tongue, she swiped it around her fiery red lips. Instantly, the sauce on her red lips was licked into her mouth. Letting out a breath of satisfaction, the female King Biluo narrowed her eyes. The High Priestess raised her hand, her palm tightly closed in front of her mouth. She lowered her head and gently spat out the bone in the wing. Then, without leaving a trace, she copied the Empress, licking the sauce on the corner of her mouth. After licking it clean, she picked up a clean white cloth, touching her red lips. Her temperament was still cold and arrogant. Dami Hayashi was not so harmonious when she ate the phoenix wing. This woman was so excited that her entire body was trembling. As she ate, she let out a bell-like laughter. The surrounding people couldn't help but look at her. After spitting out the bone, Dami Hayashi stood up, picking up the blue and white porcelain plate that had been emptied. Then, she poured the remaining sauce into the small bowl in front of her, pouring half of it. Hee hee. Later, there should be rice, right? This sauce is delicious, and it will definitely be more delicious when mixed with rice. Dami Hayashi scratched the back of her head, grinning foolishly. The surrounding people all chuckled kindly. Chi-Si rolled her eyes. This retarded foodie. Would there be rice in the imperial feast? Could she use her brain a little? Also, could she be a little more reserved? Leave some for her. At this moment, Jing Yuan approached, placing the dish in her hands on the table. Behind her, many people noticed the three maids dressed in ceremonial robes, who were carrying dishes. Looking at the dishes in their hands, everyone's eyes narrowed, bursting with a divine light. The sacrificial dish was finally out. However, before that, Jing Yuan's pleasant voice attracted everyone's attention. The third dish of the imperial feast, flying lobster. Jing Yuan softly said, her voice filled with excitement. Then, he raised his hand, stroked his sleeve, and slowly lifted the plate cover. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Steaming hot air rushed toward the opening of the lid, spreading out like a cloud. Chapter 1140. Flying Lobster. As soon as the name of the dish was announced, everyone present came to a realization. Of course, they were very familiar with this dish because it had left a deep impression on them during the previous imperial feast. After all, this dish was made with a 5-star beast emperor. Although there wasn't much technique involved, it was still visually stunning for everyone present. It seemed like the head chef didn't make too many changes to this dish. At least, he didn't change the name. However, the steam and aroma that filled the air made everyone slightly surprised. This dish was a test of the chef's ability to control fire, because fire control was related to the meat quality and texture of the dish. He lifted the lid. As the steam spread out, the dish was reflected in everyone's eyes. A giant crimson lobster appeared on the blue and white porcelain plate. The lobster's long whiskers reached the sky, and its claws spread out to the sides as it looked up at the sky. The shell on its back was peeled off, and the sparkling white lobster meat inside was flipped out and cut into pieces. The lobster meat was sparkling and translucent, as if it was wrapped in a layer of glowing substance. Jing Yuan knew that this was the last spoonful of hot oil. This dish was very simple, and there was indeed nothing that needed to be changed. Even head chef Bu did not make any changes. However, although this dish looked simple, it was not easy to cook. But in reality, it was quite difficult. That was because the control of the fire had stumped a large number of chefs. If the heat was not controlled well, the lobster meat would become overcooked or overcooked. In Jing Yuan's eyes, this lobster's heat control was flawless. This could be seen from the jade-like lobster meat. No one was too surprised by this familiar dish. Of course, they weren't too disappointed either, although this dish didn't surprise them. However, the aroma and color made them want to taste it. Everyone picked up their chopsticks. He picked up the glistening lobster meat. The lobster meat was soft and bouncy. When chewed, it gave off a rich fragrance. This lobster was very big. Bufong cut the lobster into pieces. Each piece was about the size of fist. With one bite, the overflowing gravy made one feel incomparably comfortable. Delicious. Everyone's eyes lit up and they nodded. Even if it was the same dish, the dish cooked by the head chef of this year's imperial feast was excellent and incomparably delicious. In the distance, Hades' era had just finished eating the flying phoenix wing. He was holding a spicy strip in his mouth, and a satisfied expression appeared on his face. As for the flying lobster, he did not have much expectations. Only Bufong's spicy blood lobster could be eaten. That was the best, the fighting lobster of lobsters. It was definitely a top-notch delicacy. You kept nodding at the side. She had a deep impression of the spicy blood lobster. After all, she was a loyal blood lobster fan of Bufong. If she was given a plate of blood lobster, she could eat until the end of time. After eating the lobster meat, the Empress lazily leaned back on her chair. He exhaled softly. Up until now, she had been very satisfied with the imperial feast. She had eaten so much that she was a little bloated. He leaned against the chair and rested for a while. It was the same for the others around him. The endless dishes made their eyes unable to take it all in. Their mouths did not seem to stop moving. It should be known that in the previous imperial feast, many dishes were served. Basically, no one would eat them after picking up their chopsticks. However, this year's dishes were basically snatched clean. Even the sauce was not spared. Next, they could have a good rest, because the 3 sacrificial dishes were about to be served soon. The sacrificial dishes were not for them to eat. They were meant to be offered to the existence of God-vanishing mountain to taste. Thus, the sacrificial dishes were the most important. When the sacrificial dishes were opened, no one was allowed to move their chopsticks. Moreover, they had to pay attention to many etiquettes. Waiting until the other diners put down their chopsticks and stopped eating, Jing Yuan's gaze abruptly froze, her breathing involuntarily stagnating. She knew that a tense scene was about to happen. The sacrificial dishes were about to be served. Actually, outside the door, there were a few maids waiting in the dark. They were also carrying sacrificial dishes, but they were cooked by Jing Yuan. Head chef Bu had changed the recipe of the sacrificial dishes. Thus, she was not sure if it would enrage the high priestess. If it really enraged her, she would immediately order people to serve the dishes she had cooked. At least, this way, the high priestess would not vent her anger on head chef Bu, causing him to be killed on the spot. After all, in the previous years, there had been cases of head chefs being killed by the high priestess. The high priestess stood up. The long robe on her body slightly shook, and the jewelry on her head shone. Within the palace, the sound of the zither bell lingered, and the sound of chanting resounded without end. At this moment, the high priestess' gaze became extremely solemn, and a solemn expression appeared on her face. Even the lazy Her Majesty, at this moment, also straightened her back, looking straight ahead. The flying lobster's plate was taken away. Under Jing Yuan's orders, 3 maids wearing sacrificial robes walked forward in small steps. They carefully placed the dishes on the table, then bowed and retreated. Both of her hands were folded, resting at her waist. Her expression was extremely solemn. The high priestess walked out of her seat, grabbing the golden scepter that the maids handed over. Dragging her long robe, she slowly walked, circling the table once. Her mouth muttered something. At this moment, the entire palace was silent. No one dared to make a single sound, because they all knew that the high priestess was communicating with that existence in the God-vanishing mountain. In the distance, Hades' eyes suddenly furrowed, staring at the high priestess, who was waving her scepter as she walked. Earth prisons 3 great forbidden lands. Every forbidden land had an illustrious reputation. Forbidden lands, life forbidden zones. The reason why every forbidden land could be called a forbidden land was because every forbidden land had a supreme existence that had fallen. Even the old Hades had to be careful when entering a forbidden land. It was enough to show how terrifying a forbidden land was. Goddess City was a force in the God-vanishing mountains' forbidden land. That existence was their sky. There was no one who did not have respect. Yu's gaze also focused. When she was young, she had the fortune to see that existence in the God-vanishing mountain. Although it was just a blurry figure, it had shaken her for a long time. That time, the old Hades had brought her into the God-vanishing mountain, wanting to borrow the spring of life's dense vitality to wash away the curse in her body. However, it was a pity that even the spring of life could not wash it away. It had even attracted the attention of that existence, although it was just a glance. Even until now, you could not forget that terrifying aura. And after returning from the God-vanishing mountain, she had been banished by the old Hades into the endless void with the identity of the Netherworld woman. Riding the Netherworld ship, she had drifted between heaven and earth. She felt that her banishment was very likely the intention of that supreme existence in the God-vanishing mountain. She gently exhaled. Nethery came to her senses from the past, and her mood was somewhat complicated. Her pitch-black eyes continued to look straight at the center of the table. There, the high priestess had already begun to lift the lid. Chef Jing Yuan's mind had long been trembling. She tightly clenched her fists, biting her plump red lips, extremely nervous. Originally, She should be full of confidence in head chef Boo's dishes. However, the high priestess's prestige made her not dare to be so optimistic. Buzz, ring, ring, ring. The golden-ringed scepter floated up. The 9 golden rings on it constantly rotated, letting out tinkling sounds. The scepter floated to the center of the spirit gold table. On it, a white magic array appeared. That magic array expanded and floated in the air, spinning clockwise. In the middle of the magic array, there was a small magic array that spun counterclockwise. The magic array shot out beams of light. It shone on the high priestess's body. The high priestess slightly took a step back. Both of her hands folded her fingertips, placing them on her forehead. Her mouth muttered a string of ancient words. Then, she continued forward, walking to the front of the 3 dishes. Both of her hands that were placed on her forehead loosened, pressing on the lid, gently lifting it. Tens of thousands of golden light beams shot out from within. Everyone's gaze was attracted, watching the dishes under the high priestess's hands. The sacrificial dishes were finally going to show their true colors. Buzz, a wave of unique fluctuation spread out from within. Spring wind, summer wound, autumn astringency. These are the names of the 3 sacrificial dishes. The high priestess's movements were very fast. After lifting the lid of the first dish, before the dish's radiance had even faded, she had already opened the second and third dishes. Boom! A strange fluctuation suddenly burst out from the 3 dishes. Everyone sensed a gust of air rushing towards them. Their eyes widened as they stared at the 3 dishes that were flickering with dazzling radiance. Around the imperial palace, the musicians holding the harps suddenly played a musical piece. This was the sacrificial music, the necessary background music, when opening the 3 sacrificial dishes. It was as if they were respectfully welcoming the arrival of the god-vanishing mountain's existence. Flap, flap. The robe on the high priestess's body fluttered without any wind. Her aura suddenly underwent a shocking change at this moment. In the next instant, her eyes narrowed. The radiance on the 3 dishes suddenly scattered, revealing their true colors. Spring wind was a plate of flowers piled up with 32 kinds of vegetables. Steam billowed above it, overflowing with light and color. Summer wound was a meat dish piled up with 32 kinds of meat, the fragrance of the meat billowing. Autumn bitterness was a bowl of soup, a bowl of thick soup that looked like clear water. In the middle of the soup bowl, there was a round limestone bead-like thing. 3 dishes, 3 different styles, 3 different cuisines. Hiss, hiss, hiss. However, the moment everyone saw the appearance of the dishes, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The high priestess' long robe also stopped fluttering even though there was no wind. The atmosphere suddenly froze at this moment. Jing Yuan's eyes shrank, looking at the high priestess in fear. She felt a wave of terrifying aura completely shrouding her in an instant. That feeling made the words stuck in her throat completely unable to come out. This scene was very familiar. That time, the high priestess had killed the head chef of the imperial feast. Today, this scene had once again appeared. The array was spinning, and the zither was playing together. However, everyone's mind had become ice cold. The 3 dishes emitted hot steam, the fragrance lingering around. However, no one had the slightest appetite. The female King Biluo looked at the 3 dishes, then gently sighed. Pursing her red lips, this little chef is really daring. He even dared to change the sacrificial dishes. This time, what that little chef should consider is not whether or not he can enter the god-vanishing mountain, but whether or not he can survive. The female king, Biluo muttered. As her words fell, the high priestess suddenly turned around, her ice-cold and emotionless gaze landing on Jing Yuan's body. Who dared to change the sacrificial dishes? And all 3 of them have been modified? The high priestess' voice was like 10,000-year-old ice, chilling to the bone. It made Jing Yuan's entire body shiver in fear. She wanted to open her mouth and ask people to bring in the sacrificial dishes, but she didn't even have the chance to open her mouth. She realized that under this terrifying pressure, she couldn't make a sound at all. Facing the high priestess' ice-cold and emotionless gaze that looked down on all living things, a huge shadow shrouded Jing Yuan's heart. This person wasn't the high priestess. Jing Yuan couldn't help but want to bend her knees and kneel. That was a kind of unparalleled prestige. The surrounding people all stood up from their seats. Everyone revealed a look of terror, because at this moment, that terrifying pressure also shrouded their bodies. It was as if there was a gaze from ancient times staring at them. Everyone's breathing stopped. The unparalleled existence had descended on the high priestess, only to see the high priestess figure suddenly appear in front of Jing Yuan. She raised a hand. That hand was as white as a lotus, as if it was the focus of the entire world's gaze. Slowly patting towards Jing Yuan's head, a terrifying aura spread out. Suddenly, just as that palm was about to hit Jing Yuan's forehead, a clear sound of footsteps slowly came from the entrance of the imperial palace. A slender and skinny figure single-handedly held a blue and white porcelain plate, slowly walking over. The sudden sound of footsteps caused the high priest's palm strike to freeze abruptly. Chapter 1141. Thud, thud, thud. The clear sound of footsteps rang out in the great hall. It echoed in everyone's ears. Everyone was slightly taken aback as they lifted their heads and looked in the direction of the voice. The female King Biluo furrowed her brows, looking at the palace gate. There, a slender and thin figure slowly walked over. Qixi's gaze also turned, slightly surprised. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They could only suck in a breath of cold air. As women, they were used to gossiping, but at this moment, under the terrifying pressure and aura of the high priestess, they did not dare to say a word. But this did not hinder the surprise on their faces. This man actually dared to appear? Oh my God! This man was really daring. Was he not afraid of death? At this moment, the high priestess was possessed by the supreme existence in the god-vanishing mountain. Incomparably terrifying, that man had changed the sacrificial dish, which meant that he had offended the supreme existence. Was he not afraid of being obliterated? But many people also had some admiration for Bufang. At least the other party still dared to appear and did not let the innocent Jing Yuan suffer for him. In the distance, Hades era, and you also narrow their eyes. Bufang, young man, every appearance is so flashy, Hades era said to you, who was beside him, with a spicy strip in his mouth. His voice was not loud, but in this palace, it was incomparably clear. Just like the footsteps, it was transmitted to everyone's ears. The female King Biluo turned her head and glared at him, signaling him not to talk nonsense. But you kept nodding, agreeing with Hades' era's point of view. On the other side, the high priestess' movements froze. In the next moment, she slowly raised her head. That cold, emotionless, and contemptuous gaze fell on Bufang's body. Bufang slowly walked over. The red and white vermilion robe on his body fluttered in the wind as he walked. Holding a dish in his hand, he slowly walked over. He also met the high priest's gaze, which caused his pupils to involuntarily shrink, as a shadow seemed to cast over his heart. What a terrifying gaze! Bufang exclaimed at his heart. I'm the one who changed the sacrificial menu, and I'm also the one who cooked the sacrificial dishes. If you want to look for someone, look for me. Why are you making things difficult for that lass? Bufang said lightly. His face was expressionless, and his cold voice lingered in the palace, echoing throughout the entire place. The words came out. Everyone was dumbfounded. Those words were like a clap of thunder that exploded in everyone's ears, causing them to feel terrified. This man? How audacious! Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. He did not know who he was facing. That was the supreme existence of the god-vanishing mountain. Even old Hades had to respect him. This man, this little chef, why did he have to say something like that? King Biluo couldn't help but roll her eyes. Is this guy an idiot? At this moment, the high priest was the true supreme existence of Goddess City. Who dared to disobey her? He actually dared to talk back. Did water enter his brain from cooking? Are you talking to me? The high priestess's cold gaze locked onto Bufang. Her face, which was as cold as ice for 10,000 years, did not change in the slightest. The exquisite makeup on her face made the high priestess look like a true empress. Do you want to die? However, as Bufang's words fell, the high priest's palm that was about to hit Jing Yuan's head slowly retracted. The pressure that was pressing on Jing Yuan's body suddenly shifted, landing on Bufang's body. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone seemed to hear a formless sound coming from the void. That terrifying voice made everyone's heart skip a beat. Bufang furrowed his brows. He felt as if there was a huge mountain pressing on his shoulder. This made him incomparably shocked. It should be known that, with the system, he was basically immune to any kind of pressure. However, at this moment, this woman's pressure actually made him feel a little pressured. Was this the supreme existence of the god Vanishing Mountain's Forbidden Land? Even Lord Go was incomparably afraid of the Forbidden Land's expert. Phew, Bufang gently exhaled. And Jing Yuan, who had lost the pressure, suddenly sat on the ground. Sweat seeped out her forehead and pores. In an instant, her clothes were soaked in sweat, tightly sticking to her body. That pressure made her feel incomparably uncomfortable, as if she had fallen into an abyss. Cough, cough. Jing Yuan opened her mouth, realizing that her throat had become hoarse. She coughed. This cough instantly broke the silence of the imperial palace. Looking at the high priest with lingering fear, Jing Yuan turned her head, looking at the entrance of the imperial palace. Quickly come in. Bring the sacrificial dish in. Jing Yuan said a little anxiously. Swish. A wave of slightly messy footsteps rang out. In that darkness, 3 maids wearing sacrificial robes carried the dishes, a little flustered as they walked over. In their hands, there were 3 sacrificial dishes. This scene caused many people to be in an uproar. Some even heaved a sigh of relief. As expected of Chef Jing Yuan, who had hosted several imperial feast events. She was really thoughtful. This way, that existence's anger should be appeased, Bufang held the dishes in one hand. Seeing this scene, his brows involuntarily furrowed. The high priest's indifferent gaze turned, landing on the 3 maids. Seeing the dishes in the 3 maids' hands, his gaze slightly wavered. In the next instant, a wave of even more terrifying aura burst out in the void. Everyone felt as if their hearts were being grabbed by an invisible hand. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. The air seemed to have completely frozen. You dare to make a fool out of me? The high priest's cold voice resounded in the void. In the next instant, he waved his hand. The 3 maids suddenly felt their bodies turn cold, and their figures staggered back. The 3 dishes in their hands were instantly engulfed by an invisible force and directly crushed into pieces with a bang. They completely exploded, turning into scattered dishes that scattered on the ground. The fragrance of the dishes filled the air. The 3 maids' faces turned pale. They hurriedly knelt on the ground, almost crying. The female King Biluo shook her head, looking at Jing Yuan, feeling a little speechless. This girl, trying to be clever, turned into a fool. Jing Yuan's mind was blank. She did not think that the high priest's reaction would be so intense. Make a fool? How could it be a fool? Jing Yuan did not know what to do at all. Those who make a fool out of me will forever fall to the Acheron. A loud explosion rang out. The high priest's long robe fluttered, and a finger pointed toward the space between Jing Yuan's eyebrows. Wherever the energy passed, everything would shatter, and the void seemed to be completely distorted. This move, even the female King Biluo sucked in a breath of cold air. Chi Si's eyes shrank, and her lips turned pale. Dami Hayashi's eyes widened. She did not think that the previously happy and harmonious imperial feast would suddenly become so tense. Jing Yuan sat in a daze, completely losing the ability to think. Was she going to die? Was she going to die just like that? That terrifying finger energy made her feel cold all over. It felt like her world was collapsing. Suddenly, a figure blocked in front of her. That figure's scarlet robe fluttered, and fire wings spread out, flaming feathers fluttering. Boom! Bu Fong's face paled, and his figure continuously retreated a few steps. His brows furrowed, and his heart sucked in a breath of cold air. Relying on the invincibility of the vermilion robe, he blocked this blow, but the aftermath of this blow almost sent him flying. First, wasting food is not right. Second, the recipe you gave me had too many mistakes, so I corrected the mistakes in the recipe and cooked the sacrificial dishes. This is for your own good. Third, my apprentice chef. I'll teach him. Bu Fong held the plate in one hand, and the other hand brushed the vermilion robe on his body. He raised his eyes, looking at the high priestess, and said expressionlessly. The surrounding people were silent, and they were dumbfounded. This man, he actually withstood the attack of the Supreme Existence. Even if it was just a wisp of the Supreme Existence's divine sense that was attached to the High Priestess, it was not something a 3-star true immortal realm chef could withstand. Of course, this was not the main point. The main point was, a little chef like you actually pointed out the 3 flaws of the Supreme Existence? How awesome are you, little chef? If I give you a kitchen knife, do you want to fly to the sky? Dami Hayashi was shocked beyond words, and her mouth opened into a circle. Chi-Si looked at Bu Fong with a complicated gaze. Looking at the scared Jing Yuan, her heart was filled with lingering fear. The Empress sat on her seat, crossing her legs. Her white and tender calves overlapped, forming a shocking arc as she looked playfully at the scene. Hades' era held the spicy strip in his mouth with great interest. Bu Fong, young man, wanted to stir up trouble again? The power of the finger was blocked by Bu Fong. The High Priestess' eyes also slightly changed, and there seemed to be a trace of doubt emerging. Her pupils stared at Bu Fong. Her gaze seemed to come from ancient times, deeply locking onto Bu Fong's body. Suddenly, the High Priestess let out a soft cry. Then, her iceberg-like face suddenly melted, and she gently smiled. That smile made the world dim. Even the people of Goddess City, who were also women, felt ashamed of their inferiority. Bu Fong sucked in a breath of cold air. Is this woman crazy? Why is her smile so strange? Interesting. Your aura is very familiar. 10,000 years ago, I seem to have met it. The High Priestess suddenly said. These words made Bu Fong's eyes shrink. At this moment, his spirit sea was suddenly filled with stormy waves. Terrifying waves swept over. The gold divine dragon suddenly let out a dragon roar. The black turtle roared. The vermilion bird cried. Even the white tiger, who was sleeping in a corner, opened its eyes. Its fur stood on end, and its roar reached the sky. At this moment, the 4 great tool spirits actually became vigilant. At this moment, Bu Fong naturally noticed the 4 great tool spirits' strange behavior. He was even more shocked. He had never seen the 4 great tool spirits in such a state. Bu Fong lifted his head to look at that woman. The High Priestess was still smiling playfully at him. No, Bu Fong had a feeling that the other party was not looking at him. Instead, she was looking at the 4 great tool spirits in his spirit sea. Bu Fong even had an illusion that if this woman went one step further, she would be able to see the system in his body. Damn it, is this woman a monster? All of a sudden, that woman retracted her gaze. Her cold voice rang out. Based on your aura that made me recall some memories from 10,000 years ago, I won't hold it against you for fooling me. But do you know how important the sacrificial dish is to me? The High Priestess's long robe fluttered as she looked straight at Bu Fong. Bu Fong rubbed his nose. There was actually such a thing. However, it was good that the other party did not hold it against him. Otherwise, Bu Fong really did not have the confidence to protect Jing Yuan unless the Lord Go was here. However, the Lord Go did not seem to want to see this woman from God Vanishing Mountain. He let out a breath. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched, looking confidently at the High Priestess. He said, "It's because I know how important it is that I help you change the recipe. As a chef who wants to become the god of cooking at the top of the food chain in this fantasy world, how can I cook a recipe that is full of flaws? The high priestess narrowed her eyes. Don't worry. You should at least try the dish that I cook. Don't be in a hurry to reject it. Maybe there will be a surprise. Also, I've added another dish for you. This will make your incomplete recipe even more complete. Spring wind, summer wound, autumn astringency, winter morning. This is the complete, immortal medicinal cuisine. Bufong said. The sound of a heartbeat rang out. The heart of cooking path throbbed, and a strong sense of confidence surged out from Bufong's body. Holding the dish with one hand, he gently threw it. Instantly, it turned into a stream of light, shooting toward the dining table. Soon, it landed on the spirit gold dining table, fusing with the 3 sacrificial dishes. Boom! In an instant, the magic array spun faster. The steam, fragrance, and spirit energy from the 4 dishes all poured into it. The high priestess' eyes shrank. The surrounding people also sucked in a breath of cold air. Chapter 1142. The array flashed. The outer array spun clockwise, while the inner array spun counterclockwise. A huge suction force spread out from it, continuously sucking in the heat, fragrance, and spiritual energy lingering around the dishes on the table. Bufong's words were like a morning bell ringing in everyone's ears. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This man had not only changed the recipe of the sacrificial dishes, but he had also added one more dish into it. Was he trying to stir up trouble? Changing the sacrificial dishes like this was completely enraging the supreme existence of the god-vanishing mountain. The way the surrounding people looked at Bufong had completely changed. It was as if they were looking at a fellow who did not know life from death. And Bufong's actions, in their eyes, were indeed reckless. However, the possessed high priestess furrowed her brows. Looking at the 4 sacrificial dishes, a hint of doubt flashed across her eyes. Spring wind, summer wound, autumn astringency. This was the recipe she had given a goddess city. However, Bufong had actually added another dish on the basis of the original recipe. It was called Winter's Morning. Moreover, Bufong had instantly said the name of this sacrificial dish. That's right, this sacrificial dish had another name. It was the immortal medicinal cuisine. It was given to her by an old friend 10,000 years ago. It was used to treat injuries. However, this recipe was incomplete. She knew very well that there were many flaws in this recipe. However, in the past 10,000 years, no one had been able to change this flaw. There were chefs who tried to modify this immortal medicinal cuisine, but they all changed the immortal medicinal cuisine into an incomparably poisonous poison cuisine, although it didn't pose much of a problem to her after eating it. Although eating it did not cause any harm to her, there were no benefits. Thus, from then on, she forbade any chefs from changing the sacrificial dishes. Anyone who did, that would be killed on the spot. Looking at the 4 dishes that shone together with the array, the high priestess was silent. The surrounding people did not even dare to breathe loudly. Seeing the high priestess' silence, Bufong also slightly heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that this woman's heart should have been moved. From the moment he saw these 3 recipes, Bufong knew that these 3 recipes described the elixir cuisine. No, it was the immortal medicinal cuisine, which was of a higher grade than the elixir cuisine. The flow of energy within was extremely brilliant, fully displaying the medicinal properties of immortal ingredients and immortal herbs. It was flawless, but because it was too perfect, any changes would cause this immortal medicinal cuisine to lose its medicinal effect, turning it into an incomparably poisonous cuisine. Bufong had also gone through countless deductions before he made the final decision to modify it. Fortunately, his culinary skills had been tested and improved for a long time. If it was before, he wouldn't have been able to do so. He really did not have the confidence to make such a change. As for Winter's Morning, it was deduced by Bufong according to the direction given by the system. Although he knew that this Winter's Morning wasn't the best combination for these 3 dishes, it was still better than the previous 3 immortal medicinal cuisines. Since that's the case, I'll give it a try. I hope you're not lying to me. If you are, you know that you won't be able to walk out of this city alive." The high priestess coldly said. Then, she turned around, leaving Bu Fong with her back view. The high priestess walked in front of the spirit gold dining table. Everyone's gaze was attracted. They anxiously stared at the high priestess. Right now, the high priestess was the most terrifying. Being able to communicate with that supreme existence of the god vanishing mountain, the high priestess had always been terrifying. The array revolved. The high priestess stretched out her two palms. On her palms, she continuously formed seals. Her slender fingers rapidly changed. Very quickly, a wave of strange fluctuations spread out from within. With a buzzing sound, a stream of light was shot out, falling into the array. The array instantly revolved unceasingly. It spread out a strange fluctuation. It enveloped the four immortal medicinal cuisines. Very quickly, the four immortal medicinal cuisines became blurry, disappearing from the spirit gold dining table. A muffled thud resounded. That golden-ringed scepter also fell, flying into the high priestess' hands, tightly grasping it. The terrifying pressure that had filled the entire place suddenly disappeared. Everyone felt that the hand that was clutching their hearts had disappeared. Everyone bent their backs, violently panting. That pressure spread out, pressing down on them until they couldn't even breathe. That supreme existence had left. The high priestess held the scepter, gently exhaling, her forehead dripping with sweat. She raised her head, her gaze a little complicated as she looked at Bu Fong. Although her fleshly body had been occupied by the supreme existence of the god vanishing mountain, she could still sense everything that had happened. Of course, it was from the perspective of a bystander. This man, his guts and boldness made her slightly shocked. To be able to be so calm in front of that existence of the god vanishing mountain, this man was not ordinary. Even compared to that Hades Tenzang, he was not the slightest bit inferior. However, changing the sacrificial dishes without permission was a huge crime. For tens of thousands of years, countless chefs had wanted to change the sacrificial dishes, but they were unable to make any effective changes. This caused countless chefs' blood to splash on the spot during the imperial feast. This man, on what basis did he think that his changes could obtain that existence's approval? The high priestess did not say anything. She just stood on the spot, quietly waiting. She knew that she would soon know this man's fate. If this man was really just exaggerating to fool that existence, he would definitely be killed on the spot. In the distance, the female King Biluo narrowed her eyes, watching with interest. This little chef, could it be that he really had the confidence? No one had successfully changed the sacrificial dishes for tens of thousands of years, and this little chef had done it in just a few days. He even added a dish. If Bu Fong really succeeded, then giving him a chance to enter the god vanishing mountain. So what? The female King Biluo smiled playfully. At this moment, the surrounding people all had different emotions in their hearts. Everyone looked at Bu Fong with an extremely complicated gaze. However, basically, no one thought highly of Bu Fong. The main thing was for tens of thousands of years, so many chefs had not been able to do it, but this young male chef had done it in just a few days. It wasn't that they didn't think highly of him. Rather, it was really unbelievable. At this moment, Jing Yuan came back to her senses. Looking at Bu Fong, who was standing in front of her, her eyes instantly reddened. Pursing her lips, she had an urge to cry. She was scared. Only now did she realize that she had some lingering fear and awareness. The high priestess was enraged. Only now did she realize what a stupid decision she had made. Bu, head chef Bu. Jing Yuan's little face was deathly pale, without a trace of blood. She softly called out. However, Bu Fong did not reply her. This caused her face to turn even paler. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something. However, before she could say anything, Bu Fong interrupted her. All right, don't blame yourself. This is the only time. There will not be a next time. Bu Fong lightly said, his tone not revealing the slightest emotion. Jing Yuan pursed her lips, softly grunting in agreement. Tears streamed down her face, and she could not wipe them away no matter how hard she tried. Go to the Imperial Palace's kitchen. Bring out the remaining 12 dishes. It's about time. Also, bring the prepared wine over. Bufang said. Jing Yuan was bewildered. She did not care about crying anymore. She stood up, nodded her head, and bowed to Bufang. Then, she turned around and walked to the kitchen. The three maids, who were so scared that their legs turned to jelly, also left in a panic. The entire palace became quiet once again. Gazes fell on Bufang. The women's gossipy nature was once again unleashed at this moment. They whispered into each other's ears, chattering nonstop. The female King Biluo stood up. As soon as she stood up, the entire place became quiet again. The high priestess leaned on her golden-ringed walking stick, slightly panting. Obviously, being possessed by that existence consumed a lot of energy. After all, that existence was too powerful. The Empress looked at the maids behind her. The two maids instantly understood her intention. They moved the spirit gold chair over, placing it behind the high priestess. The high priestess smiled, bowing to the female King Biluo. Thank you, Your Majesty. After saying that, she sat down. The golden-ringed scepter was held by the maids. Both of her hands were placed flat on her knees. Her gaze was calm as she looked at Bufang. After a long time, Jing Yuan slowly walked over. In her hand was a blue and white porcelain wine jar. After passing the wine jar to Bufang, she clapped her hands. Then, the 12 maids came one after another, each holding a blue and white porcelain plate with a lid. Bufang received the wine jar, slowly taking a step forward. As he moved, the entire palace's gaze followed him. He walked to the spirit gold dining table, patting the lid, taking out 2 blue and white porcelain cups. A thick wine aroma wafted out from the porcelain jar, lingering around the entire place. It made the eyes of the women there suddenly light up. This wine smells so good. Acheron of helplessness wine. This was the surprise that Bufang had prepared for this imperial feast. This was his collection, and he didn't have much. This small jar was almost half of his stock. Pouring 2 cups of wine, Bufang held the wine cups and walked to the high priestess' side. He passed one of the cups to her. The high priestess' cold face instantly lifted, looking at Bufang with a puzzled expression. Her beautiful eyebrows furrowed. What do you mean? The high priestess asked. The surrounding people also didn't understand. Drink a cup of wine to calm down, Bufang said. The high priestess froze, then reached out with both hands to hold the wine cup. She lowered her head to look at the clear wine swirling in the blue and white porcelain cup. The high priestess' eyes were a little dazed. Bufang didn't care about her, drinking the wine in the cup in one gulp. As the wine entered his stomach, the scalding warmth instantly flowed down his throat and into his body, making him feel a wave of heat. Cool, Bufang said expressionlessly. The coldness in his body, which was originally frightened by the supreme existence in the god-vanishing mountain, also disappeared. Indeed, he drank a cup of wine to calm down. In the distance, Her Majesty the Queen was already pouring wine in her cup as if she was very familiar with them. With a sizzle, a mouthful of wine entered her stomach, causing her blazing red lips to become even more moist. A trace of red also appeared on her white face. Her Majesty's eyes instantly lit up. Good wine. The high priestess recovered from her daze, her face regaining its cold expression. Glancing at Bufang, she held the wine cup with one hand, while the other waved her sleeve to cover the cup. Then, she took a sip. However, just as the wine cup touched her plump red lips, the instant the wine was poured, a wave of terrifying aura once again appeared in the entire hall. Puffed. The high priestess, who had just taken a sip, instantly spat out the wine. Putting down the wine cup, she stood up, respectfully bowing towards the place where the pressure appeared. Her hands were folded, pressing against her forehead. In the illusionary void, it instantly constantly twisted. Then, a golden light suddenly flashed. In the next instant, Bufang felt a wave of terrifying aura once again spread out. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. Looks like I'll have to drink another cup of wine to calm down the shock. Not only Bu Fong, everyone in the palace suddenly felt their minds shake. It was as if they were being grabbed by a big hand again. It appeared. The supreme existence of the god Vanishing Mountain had come again. This time, it must be to find that man to settle the score. In the past 10,000 years, the people who dared to change the recipes of the sacrificial dishes were all killed. Without exception, this male chef was about to be killed. Boom! The high priestess sat on the spirit gold chair, suddenly turning her head. That gaze contained a shocking aura that burst forth and spread out. A terrifying pressure suddenly descended. The gaze directly pressed down on Bu Fong. A cold voice resounded throughout the entire hall. Tell me, who are you? Why do you have the complete recipe of the immortal medicinal cuisine? As soon as the words came out, everyone was shocked. Chapter 1143. The unparalleled existence had returned. When the high priestess' body once again emitted that extremely terrifying aura, the entire audience became very quiet. Everyone guessed that the existence was planning to come back to settle the score with a male chef. This man was extremely daring and unscrupulous. He actually changed the recipe of the sacrificial dish and even added a new dish without permission. With this kind of behavior, the chef in charge of the sacrificial dish would have long been slapped to death by the high priestess. To be able to live for so long, this male chef had already created a miracle. In the eyes of the people in the palace, the unparalleled existence had taken away the sacrificial dish. After tasting it, she would come back to settle the score. Everyone's breathing became stagnant. They stared blankly at the high priestess, who was originally bowing respectfully, slowly raising her head. The aura on the high priestess' body became somewhat terrifying, causing the air to seem to be sucked out. Tell me, who are you? Why do you have the complete recipe of the immortal medicinal cuisine? The high priestess' contemptuous gaze stared at Bu Fong as she slowly opened her mouth. As soon as these words came out, the originally stagnant atmosphere suddenly froze. Everyone raised their heads in confusion as they looked at the high priestess. It was as if they did not understand why the high priestess, who was possessed by the unparalleled existence, would ask such a question. The meaning behind these words was thought-provoking. The complete recipe of the immortal medicinal cuisine? Could it be many people sucked in a breath of cold air? They all understood the meaning behind the high priestess words. The previous sacrificial dish was incomplete, but after that man modified it and added another dish, it became complete. This meant that this man's modified sacrificial dish was correct. After everyone understood the meaning behind these words, they could not help but burst into an uproar. This meant that this man would not die. Even the female King Biluo felt a little incredulous at this moment. An expression of disbelief appeared on her face. Her fiery red lips slightly parted, revealing a dazed look. Chi Si and the others were also full of disbelief. This male chef, could it be that the modified sacrificial dish was correct? The high priestess' cold aura still filled the entire audience. Her eyes were firmly locked on Bu Fong's body. Who am I? Bu Fong was stunned. Why did this woman ask him that? Then he understood that this woman probably thought that he was related to the person who provided the sacrificial dishes. It was indeed difficult to modify the recipe. Even if Bu Fong modified it, it wasn't the best. Although he added a recipe, Winter's Morning. However, Winter's Morning had too many flaws. It wasn't the best combination of sacrificial dishes. Although it could be combined with those 3 dishes to form an immortal medicinal cuisine, the effect was not the best. This was naturally due to the limitations of his cooking skills. After taking a deep breath, Bu Fong's face was still indifferent. She looked at the high priest, who was watching her. He said expressionlessly, "I am just a chef who drifts through the world." The high priest stopped in his tracks. No words were spoken. After a short period of silence, the uproar died down. Everyone held their breaths. The high priest stared at Bu Fong. After watching for a long time, Bu Fong's hair stood on end. Then, the high priestess suddenly smiled. That smile of hers was breathtaking and beautiful beyond compare. Very good. Just a chef. The high priest looked at Bufong, the corners of her mouth slightly curling. In the next instant, the high priest's hair scattered. She stared at Bufong and said, "The sacrificial dishes you modified have some effects. I owe you a favor." The high priest said coldly. Suddenly, a bright light burst out from her eyes. Her terrifying aura suddenly swept through the air. Bufong felt as though there was a pair of eyes staring at him from the boundless void. Then it disappeared. Boom! It was like the evening drum and morning bell. Then, everyone fell into a trance. They saw the high priest's body softly fall to the ground. "Owe me a favor?" Bufong raised the corner of her mouth. All right, that existence from God Vanishing Mountain was a little interesting. She came out just to say a sentence? She was really willful. Was it fun to be mischievous? It seemed like the effects of the modified immortal medicinal cuisine were not bad. Bufong was also very curious about the immortal medicinal cuisine. The combination of the 4 dishes seemed to have a unique meaning. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter contained sorrow, as though it carried the meaning of reincarnation. Bufong's heart was a little confused. He felt that he couldn't grasp that point. If he couldn't figure it out, then he wouldn't think about it. Bufong was very relieved. He looked at the high priest who was lying on the ground. Bufong didn't say anything. He turned around and walked to the spirit gold dining table, pouring 2 cups of wine. In the entire great hall of the imperial palace, only Bufong's footsteps could be heard. Swish! The sound of the wine entering the cups was so clear and pleasing to the ears. Bufong carried the 2 cups of wine, walking to the high priest's side. The high priest, who was sitting on the ground, looked at Bufong, her eyes filled with a complicated expression. "Drink another cup of wine to calm yourself down," Bufong said as he passed the cup to the high priest. The high priest didn't say anything. He received the wine, remaining silent. In the imperial palace, everyone's emotions also slowly recovered. Then, a clamor resounded throughout the entire place. This male chef actually created a miracle. He used the sacrificial dishes to move that existence in God Vanishing Mountain. The female King Biluo was also a little absent-minded, looking at Bufong with a strange gaze. In the distance, Jing Yuan used her delicate hands to cover her red lips, her face full of shock. He actually succeeded. Head Chef Bu actually succeeded? She didn't think that the sacrificial dishes that Bufong modified would actually obtain the high priest's approval. She actually almost messed things up previously. Thinking about this, Jing Yuan's heart was filled with regret. All right, continue to serve the dishes. The imperial feast still needs to continue. Bufong lightly sipped a mouthful of wine, his gaze landing on Jing Yuan as he opened his mouth. Then, the sound of the harp, which had stopped for a long time, once again rang out. The music lingered in the palace, unceasingly echoing. Jing Yuan, on the other hand, took out the imperial feast dishes that Bufong had already cooked, placing them on the spirit gold dining table. The female King Biluo also regained her interest in this imperial feast. The plate cover opened, radiance shooting everywhere. Beams of light shot up into the sky, causing everyone to involuntarily let out cries of surprise. The aroma diffused from within, incomparably dense, filling the entire great hall, as though it wanted to float out of the great hall and linger around the entire city. Everyone was intoxicated, tasting the delicacies as though they were intoxicated. This was really a feast, a feeling that the previous imperial feast had never had before. This kind of feeling caused everyone to uncontrollably reveal their joyous emotions. Even the female King Biluo ate very happily this time. Chopsticks continuously reached out, placing the dishes into the bowl. This imperial feast was extremely joyous. Bufong clasped his hands, standing in the distance. Looking at the happy expressions on everyone's faces, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Although he was very confident, the imperial feast to him was not a small test. There was a huge amount of pressure. He was cooking under this pressure. If he messed up, Bufong wouldn't be able to face his goal of standing at the top of the food chain in this fantasy world, the god of cooking. Fortunately, he successfully completed it. Pulling a chair, Bufong sat in the distance, sipping his wine, his face calm. Suddenly, Bufong was taken aback. He felt as if a pair of eyes had locked onto him. Furrowing his brows, Bufong's mental energy was extremely sharp. In just a moment, he caught that gaze. Following the other's gaze, he saw the High Priestess. As though meeting Bufong's gaze, the High Priestess pursed her lips. Turning her head, she raised her wine cup, taking a sip. It was good wine and delicious food. The imperial banquet was held very satisfactorily. At least, Her Majesty was very happy. After a mess of cups and plates, the imperial feast was almost over. Looking at the spirit gold dining table, everyone was almost done eating. Bufong's eyes instantly focused. Next, there was another highlight. He waved his hand at Jing Yuan, who was standing in the distance. Jing Yuan hurried over. "Head Chef Bu, what's wrong?" Jing Yuan asked curiously. "Go get the dessert placed in the kitchen and distribute it to everyone. After the imperial feast, this dessert is the last item." Bufong calmly said. "Huh?" Jing Yuan froze. There was such a thing as dessert? When did head chef Bu make it? With some doubts, Jing Yuan left the imperial palace, walking towards the kitchen. Pushing open the kitchen door, a wave of cold air suddenly spread out. This caused her eyes to narrow. In the next moment, her eyes shone brightly. She finally understood what the dessert head chef was talking about was. On the kitchen table, a large pile of small blue and white porcelain bowls were neatly arranged. Beside each bowl was a white cloth towel and a silver spoon. This was the ice cream that Bufong had won against him with. It was also the food that she had always wanted to learn how to make. Who would have thought that head chef Bu had already included this dish in the menu of the imperial feast? How could such a delicacy not be included in the imperial feast? This dish was simply born for Goddess City. The attraction of this delicacy to women was fatal. She looked at the ice cream on the table. Jing Yuan couldn't help but smile. Her face was filled with excitement and intoxication. These ice creams were served in blue and white porcelain bowls, which were carved into beautiful blooming flowers by head chef Bu. An icy chill circulated around it. He instructed the maidservants to carefully carry the ice cream. Jing Yuan was filled with anticipation as she walked toward the imperial palace. She couldn't wait to see everyone's expressions when they were conquered by the ice cream, as well as their intoxicated expressions when they tasted it. A bowl of ice cream after the meal. It was rare for head chef Bu to come up with this kind of creativity. In the great hall of the imperial palace, the female King Biluo leaned against the chair, her face filled with satisfaction. Everyone at the spirit gold dining table, except for the high priestess who maintained her cold and arrogant demeanor, didn't care about their image as they rubbed their stomachs. They narrowed their eyes, extremely satisfied. Exhaling a breath, they felt incomparably relaxed. This imperial feast was too satisfying. Eating, watching, and experiencing, it was so King satisfying. The twists and turns of the ceremony, the aroma of the imperial feast delicacies. This was an unforgettable imperial feast. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. This imperial feast had finally come to an end. Many people were reluctant to part with him. Dami Hayashi's heart was a little sad. It seemed that she would never be able to eat these delicacies again. Chisi was also a little emotional. The female King Biluo's gaze was gentle, as if she wanted Bufong to stay in Goddess City forever and be in charge of the imperial feast. Of course, it was just a thought. Bufong would eventually leave Goddess City, because she didn't belong here. Suddenly, in the darkness in the distance, the sound of a zither rang out again. Everyone was stunned. The sound of a zither meant that a dish was being served. Could it be the imperial feast wasn't over yet? There was another dish, but the 18 imperial feast dishes were all served? Everyone was stunned, and they couldn't help but look in the direction of the kitchen. That person seemed to be a shadow. Bufong looked at the stunned group of people and stood up. "Thank you everyone for enjoying this imperial feast. Delicacies are meant to be enjoyed. If everyone can treat it sincerely, you will definitely gain something. Finally, this is the last chapter of the Imperial Feast. As the chef of this Imperial Feast, I will give everyone a dish after the meal. I hope everyone will like it and enjoy it. Bufong stood up and drank the wine in his cup in one gulp. The hot wine flowed down his throat and into his stomach, causing him a grin. One word: refreshing. Everyone was pleasantly surprised. There was still a dish. Accompanied by the sound of a zither, Jing Yuan carried the dishes and led the maids out of the darkness. They lined up neatly and headed towards the spirit gold dining table. In her hand was a blue and white porcelain bowl. In the bowl, there was a flower with a milky fragrance and cold air. Ice cream. The female King Biluo was stunned, and in the next moment, she cried out in surprise. An exquisite smile bloomed on her beautiful face, intoxicating people. Originally, she felt a little regretful that there was no ice cream in this imperial feast. She didn't think that this ice cream would be served at the end. The surprise came so suddenly that it caught her off guard. Jing Yuan carried the ice cream, walking in front of the female King Biluo. She placed the blue and white porcelain bowl in front of the queen. The white cloth was gently placed down, and a silver spoon was placed on the side of the porcelain bowl. Your Majesty, Head Chef Bu's secret dessert, vermilion fruit milk ice cream. Please have a taste. Jing Yuan pursed her lips and smiled. Chapter 1144. Head Chef Bu had specially made ice cream for the Empress. Jing Yuan's words caused the Empress' eyes to light up. She realized that the ice cream in Jing Yuan's hand was indeed different from the others. The other's ice cream was snow white and emitted a milky fragrance. They were placed in blue and white porcelain bowls that were carved into the shape of flowers. Although they were beautiful, they were very common. However, the ice cream in Jing Yuan's hand was different. It was a plate of scarlet ice cream. Although it was called scarlet, it was more accurate to say that the surface of the milky ice cream was covered with a layer of juice. This juice seeped into the ice cream, causing the color of the ice cream to change. It was made into a vivid and lifelike flower figure. That flower seemed to be slowly swaying in the wind. It was extremely beautiful. With just a glance, the female King Biluo's eyes were completely attracted. She couldn't move her eyes away anymore. The maids came one after another. She placed the ice cream in her hands in front of every customer so that all the customers could have a taste of it. Making ice cream wasn't difficult, but it wasn't easy either. There were many details that needed to be paid attention to. For example, the proportion of ingredients, the control of the cold air temperature, and so on. Of course, because of some changes, the ice cream could also undergo many changes. This kind of change needed to be studied carefully. Bufong didn't spend too much time on this change. Everyone's attention fell on the ice cream in front of them. The maids retreated to the side, looking at the ice cream with envy. Jing Yuan returned to Bufong's side. Her body was slightly excited. She must learn how to make this kind of delicacy in the future. Jing Yuan dared to guarantee that in the entire Goddess City, there wasn't anyone who didn't like ice cream. This kind of delicacy was made for Goddess City. Do you want to eat it? Bufong looked at Jing Yuan, whose body was trembling, and asked with a smile. Yes. Jing Yuan was slightly taken aback. She did not expect Bufong to ask her this question. However, she did not hesitate to answer him. Of course, she wanted to eat it. She had tasted ice cream once, and the taste was like a small hand teasing her heart, making her itch endlessly. Oh, there are no other flavors left. Only the original flavor is left. With a thought, a ball of ice cream appeared in front of Bufong. He took out a blue and white porcelain bowl, scooped out an ice cream ball, and placed it inside before handing it to Jing Yuan. Jing Yuan took it excitedly. Bufong also dug out an ice cream ball. Sometimes, when he ate ice cream, that refreshing and fragrant taste and texture would make him feel happy both physically and mentally. In the entire palace, for a moment, no one spoke. Everyone picked up their silver spoons with elation on their faces before scooping a spoonful of ice cream into their mouths. Previously, when Bu Fong and Jing Yuan were competing, many people had noticed the ice cream. At that time, everyone wanted to eat it, but they did not have a chance to. Now that everyone had a chance to eat it, of course, they were happy. Her Majesty held the silver spoon, her little finger slightly raised. Her slender fingers were fair and slender. The silver spoon fell and gently dug into the ice cream that was covered with a bright red juice that seemed to reflect light. Instantly, a small hole was dug out, and the slippery juice flowed out. A small hole was dug out of the milky ice cream, revealing the pink ice cream inside. Within the ice cream, there were also tiny pieces of diced spirit fruit flesh. This spirit fruit had been processed by Bu Fong, so it was slightly different from the flesh of a fruit. It was very elastic, and when one bit into it, the juice would seep out. Then, when one bit into it, it would break apart, revealing a rich texture. This spirit fruit contained a sour taste, which was the fruit's acidity, which came from the spirit fruit itself, together with the refreshing and fragrant ice cream. The taste complemented each other, making it even more unforgettable. She slightly narrowed her eyes. She put a spoonful of ice cream into her mouth. The Empress' red lips pursed, and the corners of her mouth rose. Her nostrils flared, and her face showed an intoxicated expression. The ice cream spread in her mouth, and the milky, fruity, sour, and sweet taste seemed to melt the Empress' heart in an instant. Delicious! The Empress' face was flushed, and she excitedly clenched her fists, looking like a young girl. Wow! The entire imperial palace seemed to be filled with an indescribable atmosphere. Even Hades' era had forgotten to eat his spicy strip at this moment. He squinted, pouted, and looked at the ice cream with a blushing face. His expression scared you, who was standing beside him, to the point that her hair stood on end. The appearance of the ice cream pushed the imperial feast, which was about to end, to the climax once again. It was silent for a long time. Everyone was eating their ice cream, and no one had time to talk. However, after eating the ice cream, the group of women who were still not satisfied began to crazily chatter nonstop. His excitement was evident on his face. Hades' era pulled you and talked nonstop. You glared at him several times, but this guy ignored her. Hades' era seemed to have found a second love other than the spicy strip. I think I ate some fruit pulp in my ice cream. I think I ate it too, but I ate it too fast, so I didn't taste it, but it's really delicious. This dish is called ice cream, right? I feel like I've been captured. The women excitedly whispered to each other, sharing their excitement. Of course, many people also noticed that the queen's ice cream was different from theirs. Chi-Si was very interested in red things, and she saw that the Empress' ice cream was red, which made her very envious. Your Majesty, how does your ice cream taste? Chi-Si asked curiously. Dami Hiyashi and the others also looked over. The Empress proudly raised her head, and her red lips curled into a beautiful arc. Her heart was bursting with satisfaction. Head Chef Bu's secret ice cream. It seems to be vermilion fruit flavor. The taste is very good, sweet and sour, beautiful and delicious. It is very in line with Ai's taste. The Empress was not stingy with her words of praise, and she praised the ice cream fiercely. Ice cream was really delicious. Bu Fong put the last mouthful of ice cream into his mouth, waiting until the ice cream melted in his mouth, sucking away the last trace of heat in his mouth. Then he stood up, and his eyes fell on the female King Biluo, who was enjoying the taste of ice cream with a group of women in the distance. Bu Fong walked slowly, and soon he was not far from the Empress. The surrounding women all made way for him. The current Bu Fong, in the eyes of these women, was a treasure. Not to mention the other dishes, just the ice cream alone. It was enough to make all the women go crazy. Your Majesty, this imperial feast, is it satisfactory? Bu Fong looked at the female King Biluo, the corners of his mouth twitching as he said. He untied the velvet rope that tied his hair, and his hair spread out. The female King Biluo looked at Bu Fong. He snorted softly through his nostrils. Her hands crossed her chest, squeezing out the ravine in front of her chest. Her snow-white, slender legs were folded together, and she crossed her legs. This imperial feast is all right. Little chef, your performance is not bad. You are barely able to enter this king's eyes. The empress' posture made many people around cover their mouths and chuckle. The empress could not put down her face, and she became arrogant. Bufang did not care. These were not the focus of his attention. Bufang indifferently looked at the empress. The expression on his face gradually disappeared, becoming expressionless. It was like a piece of cold stone looking at the empress. Then, Your Majesty, what you said before, does it still count? Bufang said, You said that if the imperial feast can satisfy you, you will open the passage to the god Vanishing Mountain. Bufang's words instantly made the entire hall quiet down. Everyone's gaze shifted, focusing on the empress and Bufang. Even High Priestess was watching coldly. The god Vanishing Mountain was incomparably sensitive to Goddess City. The smile on the female, King Biluo's face gradually disappeared. She stared at Bufang. Their gazes collided in the air without retreating, as if there were sparks flying. The surrounding people suddenly became anxious and fearful. Suddenly, the empress smiled. A smile blossomed on her peerlessly beautiful face, like a gorgeous flower blooming in the middle of a winter covered in pure white snow. It made the heaven and earth lose their color. I mean what I say. Since you have satisfied I during the imperial feast, I will naturally agree to your request. The empress said. Bufang's eyes lit up. However, I have to say the ugly words first. The god Vanishing Mountain is a forbidden land in Earth Prison. The danger within is definitely not something an ordinary person can imagine. Moreover, it's a 3-star true immortal realm ant like you. The female King Biluo said coldly. Your Majesty doesn't need to worry. This one knows what I'm doing. Bufang said, nodding his head. As long as the female King Biluo agreed to let him enter the god Vanishing Mountain, it would be fine. A forbidden land is a forbidden land. Earth Prison has 3 great forbidden lands, and Nether Prison has 4 great forbidden lands. Among them, some forbidden lands are even called life forbidden zones. Although God Vanishing Mountain isn't that scary, to be able to be called one of the forbidden lands, it naturally isn't an ordinary place. You might encounter unimaginable dangers inside. Are you sure you want to go? The female King Biluo said. If you don't want to go, you can stay in Goddess City and be Ai's imperial chef. You can enjoy endless wealth and splendor. The empress' voice was filled with enticement. However, Bufang was not the slightest bit interested in this. His goal was the spring of life. Only by finding the spring of life could the Heaven Tree seed survive. Whether it was the Heaven Chief Realm or the Heaven and Earth farmland, the importance of the Heaven Tree seed that could revive was unquestionable. Thank you for your good intentions, Your Majesty, but this one must go to the god Vanishing Mountain, Bufang said. Bufang's attitude was very firm. The female King Biluo narrowed her eyes and did not try to persuade him anymore. For it to be called a forbidden land, it meant that a supreme existence had fallen in it. The danger was unquestionable. Since you want to go, I will not stop you. 3 days later, I will open the passage to the god Vanishing Mountain. Once you enter the god Vanishing Mountain, your life and death will not be up to you, but up to the heavens, the empress said. The moment her words came out, the entire place was in an uproar. How many years had it been? Another man was going to enter the god Vanishing Mountain? The high priestess, who was sitting at the side, also tightly furrowed her eyes, deeply looking at Bufang. Images continuously appeared in her mind, causing her forehead to be drenched in cold sweat. The scenes from a few days ago continuously appeared, causing her to feel that her breathing had become a little rough. This man, Goddess City's appearance, could it be related to him? The high priestess muttered. The female King Biluo agreed to let him enter the god Vanishing Mountain. Bufang also heaved a sigh of relief. Enter in 3 days? Bufang muttered to himself. Just right. He could use these 3 days to complete the system's temporary task. Thinking about this, Bufong once again looked at the female King Biluo. His eyes had a strange look. What? You little chef. What else do you want? The female King Biluo furrowed her brows as she asked, letting a man enter the god-vanishing mountain. As the Empress, she felt very unhappy. Oh, I still have something to ask the Empress. Bufong said, if you have something to say, hurry up and say it. The Empress glanced at Bufong, impatiently replying. The corners of Bufong's mouth instantly rose. Sweeping his gaze across the audience, his eyes finally landing on the Empress. Everyone, what do you think about the taste of the ice cream that this one made? Speaking of ice cream, all the women present couldn't help but lick their lips. Delicious. Very delicious. The women all replied. Even the arrogant Empress by Luo also gave her affirmation towards the taste of the ice cream. Oh, Your Majesty, this one wants to open an ice cream shop in Goddess City, specializing in selling various flavors of ice cream. I hope that Your Majesty can agree. Bufong said. As soon as the words came out, everyone was stunned. Chapter 1145. Bufong's words caused everyone to freeze on the spot, slightly dumbfounded. The female King Biluo also looked at Bufong in confusion. What did you say? She felt that she must have heard wrongly just now. Wasn't this little chef going to enter God Vanishing Mountain? Then why was he talking about opening a shop? Entering God Vanishing Mountain, whether or not he could come out alive, was a problem, and this little chef still had the leisure to care about opening a shop. However, very quickly, her face became solemn, because she realized that Bufong seemed not to be joking. He really planned to open a shop in Goddess City, an ice cream shop. As the queen of Goddess City, she could naturally see the significance of ice cream to Goddess City. No woman could resist the temptation of ice cream. Not even she could not. Once an ice cream shop was opened, the queen could only imagine how popular it would be when the time came. Surpassing the previous Spring Breeze Pavilion was not a problem at all. Opening an ice cream shop in Goddess City will not only have ice cream, but also many other delicacies. Your Majesty will know when the time comes. Bufong said, as for opening a shop, we'll talk about it after you come back alive from God Vanishing Mountain. The female King Biluo furrowed her brows and did not immediately agree to Bufong. Instead, she waved her hand as if refusing to continue this topic. However, Bufong did not give up. Within 3 days, the shop needs to be opened. Bufong thought for a while, then said seriously. The abrupt task requirement was for Bufong to open the shop before entering God Vanishing Mountain. If he missed it, it would be considered as a failure. Of course, Bufong was also very curious as to why the system's abrupt task had such a rule. Could it be that opening it earlier had some benefits? The queen looked at Bufong and smiled. It was a cold smile. Opening an ice cream shop in 3 days. How are you going to manage it? After 3 days, you will enter God Vanishing Mountain, and your life and death are unknown. Why should I help you open a shop? The queen crossed her legs and leaned against the chair. She raised her chin and looked at Bufong. Your Majesty, don't worry. I will arrange everything before entering the God Vanishing Mountain. Bufong said. King Biluo looked at Bufong, and Bufong looked back calmly. After a long time, the queen relented. Perhaps it was because Bufong had organized the imperial feast well. Perhaps it was because Bufong had managed to survive after changing the sacrificial menu. Perhaps it was because of the bowl of vermilion fruit-flavored ice cream. The queen agreed to Bufong's request. The location of the store was the newly renovated Spring Breeze Pavilion. It was the Spring Breeze Pavilion that had eaten Bufong's perishing pot. The bottom floor of the Spring Breeze Pavilion was emptied by the queen and turned into an ice cream shop. Perhaps this was nothing much to the queen. The imperial feast was finally over. After Bufong thanked the queen, he left the palace and returned to the kitchen to deal with the cooking matters. Jing Yuan was also called over by him. Since the queen had agreed to Bufong's request, Bufong naturally had to do his best. And since Bufong was going to enter the God Vanishing Mountain in 3 days, this newly opened store naturally needed a leader, and the leader also needed to know how to make ice cream. As an apprentice chef, Jing Yuan was the best choice. After cleaning up everything in the kitchen, Bu Fong clasped his hands, bringing Jing Yuan out of the palace's kitchen. The queen's efficiency was also very high. Perhaps it was because she wanted to eat ice cream earlier, so she quickly gave the Spring Breeze Pavilion store to Bu Fong. The moment the queen's hand came down, the system's solemn voice resounded in Bu Fong's mind. Confirmation of ice cream shop completed. Renovation begins. Renovation time. One day. Host, please name the ice cream shop. The system's words made Bu Fong slightly stunned. The system's efficiency was really high. The moment the queen approved the store, it had already started the renovation. However, Bu Fong also knew that time was very important to him. Only the system's name for the ice cream shop, after careful consideration, Bu Fong came up with a name. Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop. He was very satisfied with this name. Jing Yuan obediently followed behind Bu Fong, her mood a little excited. She knew that in 3 days, Bu Fong would enter the God-Vanishing Mountain, and Bu Fong had told the queen that he would open the ice cream shop within 3 days. Once the ice cream shop opened, it naturally could not be without a manager and chef. The ice cream needed to be made by someone. Thus, within these 3 days, Bu Fong would definitely teach her how to make ice cream. Just thinking about it made her excited. Bu Fong glanced at Jing Yuan, who was excitedly clenching her fists. Her face was bright red, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Your heart is really clear. Jing Yuan, on the other hand, rubbed her head and giggled. Let's find a quiet place, and I'll teach you how to make ice cream. It won't be too difficult, and you'll have to comprehend it yourself. Aside from making ice cream, I'll also teach you how to make other cold drinks in the next 3 days. Soon, the two of them left the Imperial Palace, walking out of the Dragon Lake area. They came to the bustling streets of Goddess City. Although the Imperial Feast had ended for Bu Fong and the others, it was not over for Goddess City. The streets and alleys were filled with a joyous atmosphere. To make ice cream, milk was needed, and milk could only be produced in Bu Fong's heaven and earth farmland. Thus, the first place that Bu Fong wanted to bring Jing Yuan to was the heaven and earth farmland. With a wave of his hand, a powerful mental force surged out, quickly wrapping around Jing Yuan's body. Jing Yuan only felt the scene in front of her turn black, and in the next instant, she felt the world spinning. In the next instant, she heard the sound of a strong wind blowing in her ears. Bu Fong carried Jing Yuan, landing on the grass in the heaven and earth farmland. The frightened Jing Yuan finally opened her eyes. What entered her eyes was a field of green grass. The grass was lush, emitting spirit energy. As the wind blew, it rustled. The sky was dark blue, and white clouds slowly floated. The air was fresh, making people feel refreshed. Head Chef Bu, where is this? Jing Yuan curiously looked around, her eyes full of curiosity. She stood up, and a refreshing wind blew, bringing with it a rich spirit energy. The wind blew, causing her hair to flutter. Here! Bu Fong put his hands in the pockets of his vermilion robe, indifferently glancing at Jing Yuan. This is my world, Bu Fong said. After saying that, he walked into the distance. Jing Yuan was stunned, feeling a sense of superiority. The head chef was so awesome. He actually had his own world. Following behind Bu Fong, Jing Yuan curiously looked around. The grass rustled, and there was a commotion. A fat, spotted pig crawled out of it and sprinted across the grassland with its hooves wide open. On the back of the 8 treasures pig sat a petite chick with 7 colored feathers. It was 80 and the 8 treasures pig who came out for a ride. The moment the 8 treasures pig saw Bu Fong, its eyes widened and it mooed. Its courage was scared out of its wits, so it turned around and ran away. 80, because of the sudden acceleration of the 8 treasures pig, fell off the pig's back. It felt dizzy. However, when it saw Bu Fong, who was leisurely walking toward it, 80's hair stood on end. Squeak, squeak, squeak. With a series of squeaks, 80, who had eaten quite a bit of fat, flapped its wings and scrambled away. Jing Yuan was dumbfounded. Head chef, is he really that scary? Bu Fong was expressionless. With both hands in his pockets, he continued walking. Soon, they arrived in front of a wooden house. In front of the house, there was a recliner, and Nyo Han San was lying on it. Oh my, isn't this owner Bu? What brings you here? Nyo Han San jumped up from his seat, his face full of smiles. After chatting with Nyo Han San for a while, Bu Fong introduced Jing Yuan to Nyo Han San and asked Nyo Han San to teach Jing Yuan how to extract milk from a spotted cow. When Nyo Han San brought Jing Yuan to learn, Nyo Hansen's eyes lit up. Bu Fong was lying on the recliner, resting for a while. He had to modify the sacrificial dishes and even cook winter's morning according to the recipe provided by the system. It was a great burden on his mental force, and the pressure was great. For this imperial feast, Bu Fong had also done a lot of research on banquets. Perhaps one day, he would be able to cook a different world's Manchu Han imperial feast. At that time, he wouldn't be far from the god of cooking. Of course, he did not want to think about that now. Instead, he lay on the reclining chair. He lay on the recliner, enjoying the gentle breeze and relaxing his exhausted body and mind. Slowly, the sound of even breathing could be heard. After sleeping for an unknown period of time, Bu Fong opened his eyes. The sky had turned pitch black. Although there were no stars in the night sky, he still couldn't see his fingers in front of his face. Oh, the heaven and earth farmland also has night? Bu Fong was a little surprised. The heaven and earth farmland seemed more and more like a real world. After a nap, Bu Fong felt his mind clear. He was in a good mood. In the distance, Nyo Han San and Jing Yuan had also returned. Jing Yuan's sleeves were rolled up, revealing her fair and tender arms. She had a happy smile on her face. You know how to collect milk now. Bu Fong looked at Jing Yuan. Jing Yuan couldn't help but nod her head. She knew that milk was a necessity to make ice cream. In the future, if there's no milk in Fong Fong ice cream shop, you'll have to come here to get it. I will set up an array in the kitchen so that you can come here directly, said Bu Fong. Next, I will teach you how to make ice cream. Jing Yuan was bewildered. A moment later, her breathing became hurried. The night passed quickly. The celebration of the imperial feast gradually quieted down. The next day, Goddess City returned to its usual bustling state. Although the air was still filled with a festive atmosphere, Spring Breeze Pavilion in the distance, two figures slowly walked over. The morning wind was a little chilly. Bu Fong put his hands in his pockets, walking slowly. Jing Yuan's eyes were a little complicated. She returned to Spring Breeze Pavilion. However, this time, she wasn't a chef of Spring Breeze Pavilion anymore. She was the apprentice chef of Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop. Bu Fong was a little curious. What would Bu Fong's newly renovated Spring Breeze Pavilion look like? From a distance, Bu Fong saw the renovated first floor of Spring Breeze Pavilion. As soon as he saw it, his eyes sparkled. Jing Yuan, who was standing behind Bu Fong, had long been dumbfounded. What's with the transparent walls? What's with the crystal-like dining tables? Did the Spring Breeze Pavilion have such a shop? He pushed the door open. The two of them stepped in. The interior decoration made Bu Fong's mouth twitch. The walls were painted pink, and there were many decorations hanging on them. The transparent glass, floor-to-ceiling windows gave them a wide view. He turned on the lights. Bursts of colorful lights filled the air. The roof was made of white smoke, which fluttered like clouds. The counter was piled with furry nylon dolls of spirit beasts. More importantly, the appearance of these spirit beast dolls was modeled after the artifact spirits of the four god of cooking sets in his mind. Bu Fong seemed to hear the discontented grumbling of the four spirits. The system's renovation this time had completely refreshed his view of the world. Bu Fong felt that there was a system hidden in his body that was filled with the heart of a young girl, a cross-dresser. With this style, he knew it was aimed at the women in Goddess City. What a scheming system. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. Jing Yuan's eyes were full of stars, especially the furry nylon dolls of the god of cooking set. She loved them so much that she couldn't bear to part with them. Of course, the environment was also in line with her taste. She didn't expect that the decoration of Spring Breeze Pavilion would change so much in just a few days. Well, these are just external objects. Let's go to the kitchen. That's where you should pay attention to. Bu Fong said. Hearing Bu Fong's words, Jing Yuan reluctantly let go of the doll, following Bu Fong's footsteps into the kitchen. As soon as they entered the kitchen, the corners of Bu Fong's mouth finally curved into a satisfied smile. The system was still the system, and it was still meticulous about cooking. Cold machines, full of sharp edges. Among them, Bu Fong saw things like ovens and so on. These tools were provided by the system, but they were actually first-class kitchen utensils. After Bu Fong tried them, he found that these tools needed to be controlled by mental force. In the following time, Bu Fong carefully taught Jing Yuan how to use these tools to make ice cream. Of course, these tools were not only used to make ice cream. A dragon roar resounded. The red dragon flapped its wings and landed in front of Spring Breeze Pavilion, attracting the attention of many people. Chi Si jumped down from the back of the red dragon, her scarlet robe fluttering. Dami Hayashi stepped on the green dragon, casually bringing her group of subordinates over. The netherworld ship tore through the void. You, Hades Era, and the female King Biluo, who had changed into casual clothes, also landed. Everyone appeared in front of Spring Breeze Pavilion. 2 out of the 3 days had passed. Spring Breeze Pavilion should not be far from opening, so they came to see the situation. Regarding the ice cream shop that Bu Fong mentioned, they were very curious. Of course, most of them were here for the ice cream. Spring Breeze Pavilion was no longer Spring Breeze Pavilion, and the signboard above had been changed by the system to Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop. Everyone pushed open the door of Fong Fong Ice Cream Shop, entering. Their eyes seemed to be filled with brilliance. After a while, they could clearly see the scene in front of them. The decoration style of the ice cream shop that came into view completely shocked everyone. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.